Chapter 352, Heroes Saving the Girl. 2. You Black-Wind bandits are too annoying. We gave you money already, why don't you leave now? A middle-aged man slashed at 3 of the Black-Wind bandits with a furious howl. From the 100 bandits, one man who seemed to be the leader began to laugh. I've heard your Lanming clan has a beautiful-looking miss with a divine grace. Why don't you deliver her to Dang Yezhai of the Dang family to be his bride? To your Lanming clan, this won't be such a bad thing. Don't you even dream about it. The miss is the beloved pearl of our clan and the one our patriarch dotes upon most. If the miss were to have an accident here and now, then our Lanming clan would do everything possible to track down you Black-Wind bandits. The middle-aged man roared. This person had to be the leader of their group. Ha ha ha, your Lanming clan is a clan we are well aware of. With just your Lanming clan alone, us Black-Wind bandits aren't even afraid. The leader of the bandits boomed with laughter. My brothers, carry on. When the carriage is delivered to the Dang family, everyone will definitely benefit from this. Immediately, the morale of the bandits skyrocketed as they all began to fight even more passionately, bringing the 30 bodyguards under an overwhelming amount of pressure. Some of the bodyguards were slashed down by the weapons of the bandits and fell to the floor as blood spilled on the ground. Within a flash, only 20 men remained to defend desperately. As for the Black-Wind bandits, it was as if they were on stimulants as their fighting strength and enthusiasm increased. Each sword strike grew heavier and filled the air with saint force. In a short moment, another 10 bodyguards had fallen while barely a dozen of the bandits had died. Their casualties were very minimal, keeping an overwhelming advantage over the other party. You will regret this. Be prepared to pay the price, our patriarch will definitely never forgive you. The middle-aged man roared fiercely. He was a peak Great Saint Master, but at the moment, he was fighting 2 middle Great Saint Masters who pushed him to his limits. With such a heavy battle, his wounds were no longer few and minor. Blood trailed down his body at a fast rate, and if this continued, he wouldn't be able to go on for much longer. Ha ha ha, your words are too serious. When your precious daughter of the Lanming clan becomes the bride to Yezhai, the 2 sides will be family. Just how could you point your weapons at family? Don't you feel that this is a wrong thing to do? The bandit laughed. The middle-aged man's face began to ashen as his eyes narrowed in hatred. Unfortunately, he was helpless at the moment. The last 10 remaining men were all surrounded by the Black-Wind bandits and their power was not enough for them to find a way out of this situation. Seeing each and every single one of the bodyguards beside him fall, the man's face finally began to show the tiniest amount of despair. This old man will throw away his life if it means that you won't be able to claim your prize so easily. The man howled as the saint force within him burst outward. Abandoning all defense, he began to fight against 3 people at once. Quickly, he's about to use his Earth-tier battle skill. The bandit leader barked out. Even as the bandit leader spoke, the middle-aged man had already turned to slash his giant sword at the man. The 2 other Great Saint Masters that were fighting with the man earlier were clearly experienced with fighting the leader. They matched each other's movements and tried to break the man away from his concentration. Bang! Following the loud bang, a crater formed right underneath everyone's feet, causing all 4 of the fighters to fall down. Each one of them grew pale in face and began to spit out a mouthful of blood. The middle-aged man tried to crawl up from the ground, but his wounds were already quite serious. A nearby bloody bodyguard gave support to him with a worried look. Captain, are you all right? The other 3 bandits hadn't received any major damage, so they had quickly gotten back up. One of them roared out, hurry up and kill them, but don't damage the carriage. Yes. Every bandit cried out in agreement as they flew at the remaining bodyguards with their saint weapons ready to strike. PCH. 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 Just as several of the bandits brought their hands down to strike, something strange happened. Every single bandits had their heads sent flying into the air before their headless bodies began to splurt blood a meter high into the air. This sudden development caused everyone to become startled with some puzzlement. Not a single one of them had known just what happened and so they couldn't react to it. Heads of the bandits continued to fly into the air as each bandit lost their head. As pumpkin-sized heads filled the air, many of the bandits were left dead on the ground within the time span of 2 short breaths. This bizarre event caused the remaining 10 bodyguards to look on with eyes wide open in utter disbelief at what was happening right in front of them. What's happening? Who's killing them? The bandit leader cried out in terror as he watched the headless bodies of his comrades rain blood onto the ground. His voice was quavering as he spoke, and of the 100 men they had started with, only 3 were left. Suddenly, even his body froze up too as he spotted the terrifying image of a black-robed person flying at him from the side. The figure was a rather skinny-looking youth who was wearing a black robe. His hair was extremely short and his appearance was quite average. If he were to be placed within a large group of people, he wouldn't be out of place. Most importantly was the fact that he didn't look a year older than 30. The leader of the bandits stared in horror at the oncoming youth before stuttering, "Is it you that's killing, my men?" Staring at the remaining 3 bandits and then at the 10 bodyguards and the middle-aged man who was severely injured, the youth took out a pill filled with radiant saint force from his space ring and threw it at the middle-aged man to eat. Swallowing the pill that had been thrown into his mouth, the man's face began to improve as he felt the effects of the pill. This is a radiant spirit pill. In his shock, the middle-aged man immediately cupped his hands in gratitude toward Jian Chen. "This one thanks my lord, our Lanming clan will definitely thank you." "That won't be needed. I only came here in passing, nothing more." The black-robed youth that was Jian Chen stated. The 3 remaining bandits all looked at Jian Chen with a stupefied look. So many people had been killed by this black-robed youth within just a few moments. This type of strength had left them utterly confused and afraid. Even the Dang family wouldn't have such a strength like this. Run away. He's an Earth Saint Ma master. One of the bandits stuttered with fear as his face lost all color. Even his speech had been utterly incomprehensible as he tried to run away. The other 2 men had been spooked at the mention of an Earth Saint Master and tried to run on foot as well. "If you don't wish to die, then stand still." A loud command could be heard, causing all 3 bandits to nearly fall down to the ground due to the overwhelming power, but they managed to stand still in fear of making another step. "Oh great swordsman, please forgive us. We have a family to take care of and feed. They are depending on us to take care of them, but if we are to die, then they will have no way of living." One of the bandits cried with mucus dripping from his nose. Against an Earth Saint Master expert, not a single one of the 3 believed they could escape from him. "You 3 come here." Jian Chen's eyes grew cold as he commanded the bandits. Each of the 3 bandits looked at each other with a desperate look before apprehensively approaching Jian Chen and kowtowing to him. Looking at the 3 men, Jian Chen turned to the other middle-aged man behind him. "These 3 men you can take care of." "I thank the young lord." The middle-aged man spoke out in gratitude before commanding the other 3, "Find some rope to tie these 3 up, we shall deliver them to our patriarch." Upon this, the 3 bandits grew even more pale, but with an Earth Saint Master right there looking at them, they didn't dare make any sudden movements. Soon the 3 bandits were tied up like hay bales. "Guardian, what is going on now?" Suddenly, the soft sound of a lady could be heard from within the carriage. The middle-aged man immediately spoke up to respond, "My lady, there is nothing to report now, a strong young lord was able to rescue us. My lady, if you could please come out to greet our benefactor." For a moment, the carriage went silent before the doors finally opened and a red-robed girl stepped outside. This was a beautiful young girl with a near-devastating beauty. Her skin was like pure white jade and her eyes seemed as if they were capable of enrapturing any soul that gazed into them. From her appearances, she looked to be around 22 years old and had a scholarly look to her. She hadn't differed from Huang Wan's appearance much, but the major difference between the 2 was that this girl was kind in nature in contrast to Huang Wan's crafty and headstrong personality. Because of the frightful event that was happening to her earlier, her face was still quite pale, since not enough blood was reaching her face. Her eyes still had a lingering trace of fear, but as she looked around at the bloody landscape, her entire body began to tremble and grew even more pale than before, causing everyone to be worried. This was the very first time she had ever seen such a bloody massacre. Trying to force herself to become calm, her eyes quickly landed upon the black-robed Jianchen. Immediately curtsying, she spoke kindly, "We thank our hero for his assistance. We are eternally grateful to the hero." Jianchen waved his hand nonchalantly. "It was no bother since I was passing along the same route. I've come to dislike bandits as well. Since your group is safe now, I shall be leaving, goodbye." With that, Jianchen turned to leave. Although he saw that the young lady was quite beautiful, Jianchen was not a lecherous man. For such a pretty sight like her, Jianchen saw nothing but trouble. Not a single person had thought that Jianchen would have been so blunt with his words and leave when he said he would. The middle-aged man hurriedly came up to block his path and pleaded with him. "Fellow hero, please take a look at the wounds of us guards. Moving would be no problem, but fighting is outside of our grasp. Please take mercy and escort us to Thascia City, otherwise, if we were to come across someone with wicked intentions on the road, we won't be able to defend ourselves." Jianchen had some hesitation at accepting such a request, but in the end he agreed since Thascia City was also the same place he was traveling to. Chapter 353, The Lanming Clan of Thascia City. When Jianchen had agreed to protect them until the city, the bodyguards had been ecstatic. To have an Earth Saint Master join their ranks, their journey would be undoubtedly safe without worry or fear of anyone with malicious intent like the Black Wind bandits. Jianchen had been courteously invited to sit in the carriage, and death be unto those who would ask Jianchen to travel on foot. All of the horses that they had either been killed or had run away. Aside from the 3 Class 2 magical beasts pulling the carriage, there were no other horse to sit on. Unable to refuse the hospitality and well-meaning of the middle-aged man, Jianchen chose to sit on the part of the carriage where the driver would usually sit to direct the animals. "Little brother, the wind outside is quite big, you should head in." The man smiled at Jianchen with a polite air. An Earth Saint Master would be considered a top-tier expert within Thascia City, and the Lanming clan could be considered one of the 2 top clans since even their patriarch was an Earth Saint Master. If they were to lose their patriarch, then their position within Thascia City would irrevocably change. At the very best, the clan would be considered a high-quality clan. There were already a few dozen of these types of clan in Thascia City, so it could be seen that an Earth Saint Master was a high and mighty position. "It's fine, I enjoy sitting out here." Jianchen spoke. The middle-aged man didn't bother to say any more. If he were to try to convince him to sit elsewhere, then it would do more harm than good. At this moment, a delicate fragrance could be smelled from behind as the doors to the carriage opened up, revealing the red-robed girl who was walking out. Sitting next to Jianchen on the driver's seat, her beautiful eyes stared at Jianchen as she spoke gently, "Many thanks to our benefactor for saving our lives. This girl is named Laniying, if I may ask for my lord's name?" Jianchen swept a glance at the beauty next to him before turning back to look at the front. "You flatter me too much. My name is Yang Yutian." "So it is Lord Yang. Where might Lord Yang be traveling to, and where might Lord Yang be from?" Laniying's eyes stared at Jianchen with her bright eyes, but when she saw the slightest furrowing of Jianchen's eyebrows, she spoke up in a hurry. "This girl was just curious. If Lord Yang does not wish to answer, then please forgive this girl for being rude." Laughing, Jianchen spoke, "The young lady is too serious. I've come from a faraway nation to travel the entire continent and increase my knowledge and experience. The sky is my ceiling and the earth is my bed as I travel. Then it is no wonder Lord Yang is so strong with a long process of cultivation like that." The carriage continued to move slowly as the remaining 10 bodyguards traveled close by the sides of it. On the road they came across several ordinary mercenary groups who were riding horses. The middle-aged man had then spent a wealthy sum of money to purchase a few horses so that the 10 bodyguards could double up on a horse. 4 hours later, the 10 blood-soaked bodyguards and the carriage finally entered the city. On the road, everyone had begun to notice their identities and began to talk among themselves. "Isn't that the Lanming clan? For them to have so many injuries, did a powerful faction decide to be their enemy? The Lanming clan is one of the top 2 clans of Thascia City. I've heard their patriarch is an Earth Saint Master as well. Who could possibly dare try to provoke the Lanming clan and the Huanyao clan? The black-robed Jianchen continued to sit on the driver's seat of the carriage as the bodyguards nearby guided him while Laniying remained inside the carriage. Suddenly, the sounds of frantic pattering could be heard up ahead as a large group of magical beast riders charged toward the carriage. Charging ahead of them was an elderly man who was riding the class for magical beast, Storm Wolf. The moment the middle-aged man saw the elder, an immediate smile greeted his face as he cried out, "It's the Patriarch. The Patriarch is here." The Patriarch of the Lanming clan quickly reached the entire group, causing the entire group of bodyguards to salute, "We greet the Patriarch." Without even glancing at them, he flew off of his mount with an anxious expression and cried out loud with an anxious worry, "Inger, Inger. Are you all right, Inger?" The doors to the carriage opened as the red-robed Laniying walked out. When she saw the elder, she immediately began to cry out with tears, "Grandfather." Seeing that Laniying was completely unharmed, the elder's face immediately slackened as he jumped to hug Laniying. "It's okay then. Everything is fine now, Inger. This was your grandfather's fault. I didn't hire a good enough bodyguard and so my daughter has suffered." This elder was the patriarch of the Lanming clan and doted upon his granddaughter. She was the pearl of the clan and someone he had always protected. When he heard that several bloody bodyguards of the Lanming clan had appeared by the city gates, he had instantly guessed that the bodyguards that were protecting Laniying had been ambushed. In fear for the life of his granddaughter, he had immediately ran for the gates as if he were on fire. As he consoled his granddaughter, he turned his icy eyes toward the middle-aged man who was in charge of protecting her. "Guard Yun, just what in the world happened on the road? Who would dare cross paths with our Lanming clan?" "Patriarch, we had encountered the Black Wind bandits who had far outmatched our strengths. If it were not for Lord Yang who was passing by in our time of need, then I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to come back to report to you." Guard Yun spoke with regret. Hearing that, the patriarch of the Lanming clan turned to look at the cross-legged Jian Chen on the carriage as if to quickly measure him up. Then, he cupped his hands together. "I thank little brother for his assistance. My Lanming clan will be sure to reward you." Jian Chen laughed, but returned the polite gesture. "Patriarch is too kind, but your thanks will be unneeded. This one was only there by coincidence. Little brother here has saved the life of my Laniying. This is something my Lanming clan will never forget. If you could come by our Lanming clan and be our guest, it would be my greatest honor to receive you." The patriarch spoke earnestly. For a moment, Jianchen hesitated, but in the end he replied with a smile, "Then I'll be troubling you for a place to stay." "Trouble? It's no trouble at all." The patriarch waved his hand with a merry laugh. At that moment, Guardian pointed at the 3 firmly wrapped-up bandits and spoke to the patriarch. "Patriarch, these 3 were the ringleaders of the Black Wind bandits. Lord Yang was the one who captured them and they now await your verdict." The 3 bandits had their mouths wrapped up so all they could say were muffled cries of forgiveness as they pleaded at the patriarch's feet. The patriarch's eyes grew cold as he ordered, "Take them back first." Traveling to the northeastern part of Thascia City, the group soon reached a large and expansive house that was extraordinarily pretty. Even the decorations added to its beauty as the patriarch led Jian Chen to the receiving halls where they began to talk while the patriarch slyly tried to figure just what identity he had. Jian Chen calmly answered each and every question the patriarch had, but when it came to answers regarding himself, he had naturally answered with what he had told Laniying. Jian Chen had even masked his aura so that the patriarch would be unable to ascertain Jian Chen's true strength. However, the guard Yun had guaranteed that Jian Chen was an Earth Saint Master, so the patriarch had been extremely courteous without bearing any tint of arrogance. Then, Jian Chen changed the topic by asking, "Patriarch, might you have heard of something called the Space Gate?" "Space Gate? What is that?" The patriarch was confused, clearly not understanding what that was. A look of dejection could be seen on Jian Chen's face. His purpose on coming to the Lanming clan was to find news if there was a nearby space gate. Since this place was extremely far away from the Jessen kingdom, he had wanted to travel via space gate to shorten the trip. Otherwise, even if he were to use the illusionary flash, the journey would have been extremely long and the Saint Force consumption would be unbearably high. Back when he was leaving the Blue Wind Kingdom, the relations between the Jessen kingdom and its neighbors had already been extremely tense. 2 years had passed and he didn't know what the current state was or if war had already broke out. Unfortunately, the place he was in right now was too far away to hear news of the Jessen kingdom. After all, the Jessen kingdom was rather small, and the amount of kingdoms within the Tianyuan continent numbered over the hundreds. Even if one were to be extinguished, the rest of the continent would still carry on. That night, Jian Shen and the rest of the high-ranking members of the Lanming clan dined on fine delicacies. Right now the Lanming clan was enthusiastically talking to their new guest while at the same time in a closed-off area, another group of high-ranking members were talking secretly. "Father, I don't find this method appropriate. We don't know anything about the identity of this Yang Yutian and have only come to know him for a small amount of time, so we have no idea of even his personality. Just how can we so easily betroth Inger to him? We cannot be careless about this." A middle-aged man said. This was Laning's father. "Patriarch, that man is an Earth Saint Master. While his appearances are rather average, if he was able to reach the Earth Saint Master realm by the age of 30, that means his potential is unlimited. It is possible that he could make the breakthrough to become a Heaven Saint Master soon. In the case that we have the support of a Heaven Saint Master, then our clan would undoubtedly become stronger." Chapter 354, Class 6 Magical Beast, Langener, your way of thinking is far too simple. We don't understand this Yang Yutian at all. If he has a strong background, then this would certainly bode well for our Lanming clan. But you didn't think this through. In the case that this Yang Yutian has offended a terrible enemy, then our Lanmin will be dragged into this situation. Although our Lanming clan is extremely high in position in regards to Thacia City, that is still a small area in comparison to the Tianyuan continent where we are nothing more than an insect to be stamped on. We simply cannot afford to be caught up in any trouble, so I do not approve of betting on Laning's happiness for this. Your words have merit. The identity of this Yang Yutian is still unclear. Right now, we are unable to predict whether or not this betrothal will bring fortune or destruction. This is far too risky. Don't think of this situation so pessimistically. As the proverbs say, to find treasure, you must take hold of it from the jaws of trouble. Just how do you expect to catch the cub of a tiger without ever entering the cave? If we do not take this risk, our Lanming clan will forever be holed up within this small Thacia city. This is an opportunity for our clan. Young individuals with a strength like this are rare to see on the continent, but each one of them are unparalleled geniuses with a future like no other. This is the Lanming clan's chance to rise. Several men stood around in a circle as they each debated about the matter of betrothing Laning to Jian Shen. Some were in favor of this idea, some were not. But each one of them had a logical explanation for their reasons, so even after an entire day, they had not reached a conclusion. That's enough. Everyone please settle down, we are getting nowhere with this. Why don't we listen to the patriarch's words? A man spoke. Immediately, everyone's eyes turned to look at the patriarch of the Lanming clan. The patriarch looked at everyone with an expressionless face for a moment before speaking. Each and every single one of you should think about it for a moment. Do you really think an Earth Saint Master would be that easy to rope in? This youth is a strong individual with a proud air. Although he is undoubtedly not a low-ranking figure, he is also not a person that our small Lanming clan would be able to grab hold of. We don't even know how long he will stay in our Thacia city, but that's enough. We shall talk no more about this. I shall take the matter in my own hands. If you still have enough time to think, then think about what action we shall take toward the Black Wind bandits. To dare move against our precious pearl. If we don't take action against these bandits, I would be ashamed to continue living in Thacia city. Yes, Patriarch. Everyone spoke up at once. The Patriarch's might within the clan was far too high, and when he spoke, not a single one would dare to not listen. The next morning, Jian Chen told some servants of the Lanming clan before heading out of the clan compound and walking out onto the streets to roam around the city. Wuxia City was a second-class city, so the amount of people walking in and out was quite high. The city streets were filled with richly dressed people as well as many different burly-looking mercenaries. The scars on the streets were remnants from when the carriages rolled over it, showing what state the city was in. Out of the way, everyone get out of the way. Suddenly, a group of 20 mercenaries on mounts flew out from behind and continued to run like the wind, much to the amazement of everyone watching. That has to be the Black Wolf mercenaries. Seeing how much of a hurry they're in, something must have happened to them. A bystander spoke up to the person next to him. Don't you know? Yesterday night, a piece of information could be heard. According to these rumors, a Class 6 magical beast was spotted 500 kilometers away on Thousand Poison Valley. While it's heavily injured, its fighting strength is still stronger than that of a Class 5 magical beast. With the Black Wolf mercenaries running like this, I'm sure it's because they tried to kill it. Whoever could kill a Class 6 magical beast would definitely earn a plentiful profit. The other person spoke. You jest. Saying there's a Class 6 magical beast that's heavily injured, just where do you get off? The first person cried out in doubt. The mercenary had a helpless look on his face. Despite it being an injured magical beast, it's still quite hard to deal with. With my trifling Saint Master strength, it'd be impossible for me to even run away. I'll sit this situation out, otherwise, I won't live for long. From not too far away, Jian Chen's ears began to prick up at the sound of the topic of the two men. Walking toward them, he spoke, fellow brothers, is what you say about this Class 6 magical beast true? Of course it's true. I came from that place last night. A large group of people have already gathered there. Practically everyone is a great Saint Master with just a few Earth Saint Master. Do you think this is false? The second mercenary spoke with a face that made it seem unlikely to be untruthful. At that moment, another hurried cry could be heard from ahead as a group of 30 began to rush to the outsides of the city gates while on horseback. That must be the Golden Unicorn mercenaries. If you look up front, those are the captain and vice captains. It seems like they're heading for the Thousand Poison Valley. Just as the Golden Unicorn mercenaries rushed out, another group of men eagerly followed. That's one of the strongest clans of Wuxia City, the Huanyao clan. Another person cried out in shock. Even the patriarch of the clan is there. He's one of the strongest 3 men in Wuxia City. For an Earth Saint Master like him to run out in such a hurry, could something big have happened? Another person spoke out. Not even seconds after the Huanyao clan had left, another group of horseback members flew towards the gate in a hurry. When Jian Chen saw these men, he had a shocked look on his face. This was because the person leading up front was the patriarch of the Lanming clan. The moment the Lanming clan were about to run past Jian Chen, he walked out to block their path. Just as the Lanming clan were about to cry out in fury, when they saw it was Jian Chen that had blocked them, the angry scowls on their faces disappeared in an instant and were replaced with smiles and polite greetings. Even the patriarch had a smile on his face. Little brother, so you're here? Patriarch, seeing how much of a hurry you are in, did something happen? Jian Chen asked. The patriarch nodded his head. Correct, yesterday night we came across some news that a heavily injured Class 6 magical beast appeared at Thousand Poison Valley 500 kilometers away. We're on our way to that area now. In fact, earlier this morning, we had sent someone to invite you over, but there was no sign of you. With little time to spare, we could only have our servants tell you the message when you returned so that you could catch up with us later. Little brother, are you interested in coming with us to the Thousand Poison Valley? So this was the reason? Jian Chen muttered before finally replying to the patriarch's question. Afterward, another person let Jian Chen ride his horse before sharing a horse with another person. Without any more words, the group began to travel toward the Thousand Poison Valley, leaving behind a group of confused mercenaries who stared at the receding figure of Jian Chen. Just who is that person to have even the patriarch of the Lanming clan be so polite to him? If I had known earlier I would have tried to be friendlier with him. While Jianshen and the Lanming clan continued to travel toward the valley in a mad rush, the patriarch continued to explain to Jianshen all of the information he knew. With Class 3 magical beast mounts, everyone quickly exited the city and continued on the roads with haste. After an hour, they had finally reached the place where they could see a gigantic mountain peak whose peaks were hidden by the clouds and fog. Each mountain peak was around 4,000 meters tall, and a faint layer of poisonous fog could be seen swirling around. On the outskirts of the valley, a group of 1,000 people were already gathered densely on a flat clearing with tents everywhere. The Lanming clan stopped a little ways away from the clearing before the patriarch handed Jianshen a bottle. "Little brother, this is an antidote to this poison. Although the poison isn't too strong, it will limit our strength. If one spends their time too long here, the effects will show, so we may as well protect ourselves from it." Nodding his head, Jianshen took a pill and then swallowed it as easily as eating a soybean. The Lanming clan had everyone in their group swallow the pill before dismounting. Leaving behind 2 soldiers, everyone began to enter the poisonous valley. Walking into a very dense area, it began to grow hard to differentiate just what direction they were walking in. But because there was a path made for them by the footprints of the ones before, all they had to do was follow this path in a straight line without deviation. The weakest members there were all of the Great Saint Master realm, but their speed was still fast. Not too long after, their group finally reached the apex where they finally stopped in their paths. That was because there was already several hundred men gathered there with serious looks on their faces. Jianshen leaped nimbly on top of a tree branch and began to look up ahead only to see an entirely white tiger lazily sitting around with its eyes closed while protecting the cave behind it. The tiger wasn't too big, only 3 meters long with white fur all over, contradicting the information from the mercenary in Thascia city. Right in front of the tiger was a giant pool of blood where hundreds of corpses littered the ground with their lifeless poses. Among these bodies was an Earth Saint Master. Chapter 355, The Strong White Tiger. At this scene, Jianshen couldn't help but doubt his eyes. Was this really the injured Class 6 magical beast that was currently as strong as a Class 5 magical beast? No matter how he looked, it did not seem right. Right now, he and the other 100 men anxiously staring at the tiger were all feeling the same amount of doubt. Even if there were 20 Earth Saint Masters, even they would not be able to fight against a Class 6 magical beast. The sight in front of them was a complete contrast with their thoughts. The tiger's fur was still pure white without a single speck of blood. But all around it were the corpses of hundreds of bodies, including some Earth Saint Masters. To be able to kill that many people without getting itself dirty with blood, this was not something an injured Class 6 magical beast should be able to do. It seems that there's some discrepancies in the information. While this is indeed a Class 6 magical beast, it is not heavily injured at all. Jianshen spoke to himself. A snowy white tiger cub half a meter long could be seen walking out from the cave behind. With an adorably shaggy white fur, the tiger seemed as if it was just born not too long ago since its eyes weren't even open. Crawling out of the cave seemed to have taken most of its effort as it tried to continue walking with its trembling 4 limbs. The only strange thing about this tiger cub was that there was a pair of wings on its back. This was something a tiger-based magical beast should not have, so this feature was noticed by everyone straight away. Look! That Class 6 magical beast cub, my god, it has wings. Does that mean that this cub could fly later on when they mature? A Class 6 magical beast cub has appeared, how strange. This magical beast cub was just born into the world. If we can take it and bred it now, then it will undoubtedly grow into a loyal steed with a tremendous amount of power. A recently born Class 6 magical beast, how priceless. Seeing the little cub that exited the cave, everyone instantly began to grow excited as flames of enthusiasm sparked in their eyes. Greed overcame them as they looked at the cub, and some of them started to rub their hands in premonition of the wealth to come as if they were already envisioning the cub in their hands. The excitement from the throngs of men had caused the mother tiger to open both of its eyes slowly. With a powerful roar as if to threaten the group, it raised its head and pulled the cub toward its body with a paw. There was a myriad of emotions in its eyes, such as affection, sadness, pain and sorrow, but that had gone unnoticed by everyone. Except Jian Shen, who was sitting on top of a tree branch, saw it. In that instant, he had clearly seen the grim that was ominous in nature. However, it did not hide the moment of weakness at all, allowing Jian Shen to understand just how much in despair the tiger was in. The cub frantically tried to escape from the grasp of its mother as it tried to poke its head out from the mother's fur. But in the end, the cub continued to be coddled by the mother as it let out a small crying sound. There was a motherly look in the mother's eyes as it continued to watch over its cub affectionately as a loving mother would without any malice. Behind the kind-hearted eyes of the mother, there was a flash of pain that was already forcing the tiger to blink away some tears. Everyone behind the tiger mom could only watch the pair of tigers with disbelief. Not a single one of them could believe what they were looking at, since the emotions that this tiger was displaying were far too rich for them to believe that they came from a magical beast. Suddenly, a group of 100 men came running over before forming a line so that no one could pass through. Then, one of them spoke, "Out of the way, everyone out of the way. The Moyan clan has arrived, make way for us." The moment everyone heard of the name Moyan, they instantly grew startled and hastened to make a path for the clan. The group of men from the Moyan clan were all wearing black and flew on by toward the front without any obstructions. "Elder Bai, take a look, it's the cub of a Class 6 magical beast. Dear heavens, it even has wings." A Moyan clansman spoke out in awe at it. Upon hearing this piece of information, the other middle-aged man next to him had a pleasant smile on his face. The moment he saw the amount of bodies that littered the ground by the tiger, he grew serious once more. "Be careful, this Class 6 magical beast isn't injured at all. Even if it's not as strong after giving birth, we still aren't strong enough to defeat it. Elder Bai, it's the cub of a Class 6 magical beast. Right now, no one is capable of stealing it away from us, but with time, more and more people will come, making it less likely for us to be able to get it for ourselves. That's right, Elder Bai, if we hurry, then we won't have any opposition. This is our chance. If we wait, then obtaining that cub would be impossible. Elder Bai, we have a dozen Earth Saint Masters and 70 Great Saint Masters. That's more than enough to provide a good chance against this Class 6 magical beast and to get the cub." A few men spoke to Elder Bai with low voices as if trying to convince him. At this, the Elder Bai had a thoughtful look as he pondered the situation for a moment before finally saying, "Elder Kai, take your Earth Saint Masters to fight the Class 6 magical beast. I will go and retrieve the cub, then in the case that we obtain it, we will retreat immediately." "Yes, Elder Bai." The few Earth Saint Masters nodded their heads in excitement. If they could take back the Class 6 magical beast cub, then it would be a tremendous boon to their clan. After their response, they talked for a moment about their plans before the Moyan clan had each one of the Earth Saint Masters take out their saint weapons. Forming a barricade, they ran toward the Class 6 magical beast. Elder Bai stood where he was with a look of concentration as he waited for the first group to attract the tiger's attention before flying toward the cub with an incredible speed. Just as the Moyan clan made their move, the other factions of power leaped into action as well in participation of vying for the cub. Sensing the intentions of everyone around him, Elder Bai cried out coldly, "If anyone dares to try and ruin this for our Moyan clan, then we will definitely not forgive them. A Class 6 magical beast cub isn't something just anyone can obtain. Everyone should take heed. Is it worth trying to get the cub and incur our wrath?" When the crowd heard Elder Bai's threat, many people began to stop in their tracks and sigh to themselves. In their hearts, they had already given up trying to compete with the Moyan clan for the cub. First of all, they couldn't defend the clan, and secondly, obtaining the magical beast cub was not an easy task. The Moyan clan had over a dozen Earth Saint Masters and even more Great Saint Masters. This was an amalgamation of power that many were afraid of. Just what type of clan is the Moyan clan for them to be so arrogant? Jian Chen muttered from the treetop. The Moyan clan is the strongest clan in our Skull Kingdom. In terms of influence, it is ranked third in the kingdom and is reported to have at least 50 Earth Saint Masters within their ranks. Furthermore, there are even 3 Heaven Saint Masters watching over the clan. The patriarch of the Lanming clan spoke to explain it to Jian Chen. 3 Heaven Saint Masters? This Moyun clan isn't someone that anyone could belittle then. Jian Chen laughed as he turned his head back to watch the events. After his time in Mercenary City, Jian Chen's outlook had been expanded. Mercenary City had the employ of several saint kings and multiple saint rulers acting as the elders of the city. 3 Heaven Saint Masters were not of anything noteworthy in the eyes of Jian Chen. Seeing just how Jian Chen had downplayed the Moyun clan, the patriarch of the Lanming clan couldn't help but wonder and try to guess at Jian Chen's identity. For him to not even care for a clan with 3 Heaven Saint Masters, just what kind of power was he capable of? Ho! A loud primal roar could be heard as the tiger let out an energy blast from its mouth. The energy blast was like sharp blades of wind that shot towards several Earth Saint Masters in an attempt to cut them down. Several of the Earth Saint Masters didn't have enough time to react to the gust of wind and were promptly speared through the chests. With a miserable howl of pain, they fell to the ground without a sound or any further movements. This sudden change in development caused Elder Bai, who was chasing after the cub, to stop in his tracks as he stared at the several downed Earth Saint Masters in horror. Elder Kai, Bentley, Zagar, are you all right? For a long time, Elder Bai heard no response. That was because not a single Earth Saint Master had gotten back up from the ground. Elder Bai's face instantly paled as he turned his head back to the 3-meter-long tiger with horror. And no, that can't be. The elder muttered. He hadn't thought that a single tiger, even if it were a Class 6 magical beast, would be able to kill a dozen Earth Saint Masters at once. Maybe great Saint Masters, but not anyone higher. Leaping off of the tree branch he was on, Jian Chen stared at the white tiger with some dejection. So this is a Class 6 magical beast, just how in the world is this considered weak? Chapter 356, Class 7 Magical Beast. The single explosive roar of the white tiger had killed a dozen Earth Saint Masters, astonishing both Elder Bai from the Moyun clan and even Jian Chen. The other hundreds of spectators had watched this with a growing look of horror at the tiger. Heavens, this tiger is terrifying. In a second, it killed a dozen Earth Saint Masters. Can even a Class 6 magical beast achieve this? There is a large difference between a Class 5 magical beast and a Class 6 magical beast that just cannot be quantified by man. Unless it a Heaven Saint Master or higher, no one can hope to go against a healthy Class 6 magical beast. Impossible. While a Class 5 and Class 6 magical beast are indeed far apart, the difference can't be that big. This must be a Class 6 magical beast without a doubt, otherwise, a simple roar wouldn't be able to kill several Earth Saint Masters so fast. That's right, this magical beast has to be a Class 6 magical beast at the very most. There's no way for so many Earth Saint Masters to be killed so quickly, especially if they were working together to divert the magical beast's attention. The people watching the fight were all gobsmacked as they continued to talk among each other. Each one were nervously standing around as they looked at the dead Earth Saint Masters and then the tiger. They were all just great Saint Masters. The realm of the Earth Saint Masters was something they couldn't hope to reach. But even then, an Earth Saint Master was nothing more than a weak entity in the eyes of the white tiger, so there was no hope for them to attack it. To think that there's a peak Class 6 magical beast in front of me, good heavens, this is an entity that only a peak Heaven Saint Master could hope to fight, a mercenary spoke. The strength of the white tiger had terrified everyone. Although it had already killed 100 people before this, those were not all Earth Saint Masters. This sudden and major development had instantly made all of the great Saint Masters renounce any plans they had of capturing the cub, and many had even decided on retreating. The white tiger's strength was truly too terrifying. Only a Heaven Saint Master would be capable of having an even match with this beast. Elder Bai of the Moyun clan was speechless for a moment, but with the Class 6 magical beast cub right in front of his eyes, he was forced to retreat. Hurry back and report this back to the clan. The elder spoke to another person from his clan. Yes. The person immediately left on his horse. In a flash, 2 days had gone by with more and more people coming to the Thousand Poison Valley. Rumors of the Class 6 magical beast were being quickly spread about so that clans even stronger than the Moyun clan were starting to show up. Practically every group had brought at least 10 Earth Saint Masters, making the amount of Earth Saint Masters there over 100. It was even said that the Heaven Saint Master ancestor himself had shown up not too long afterward. Evidently, even he was enticed by the allure of a Class 6 magical beast cub. Out of the way, the sect of Dragon and Tiger is here. If everyone could please move out of the way. We are from the Spirit Haven sect. The Biyao clan is here. Move out of the way. We are the mercenaries of the war god. Yield the way. A constant stream of strong factions came one by one to the valley when they had heard about the Class 6 magical beast. Each one was waiting for a chance to arise for their groups of eagerly awaiting Earth Saint Masters. With this pace of development, the Lanming clan had already decided to not get involved. With the patriarch deciding that striving to enter the tiger's cave for the cub was no longer a plan that could work and cleaned his hands of the affair. Today, the heads of every powerful faction had gathered together in order to discuss the matter of the white tiger. While they were each Earth Saint Masters and could most likely fight a Class 6 magical beast, they did not want to pay a heavy price for it. Each one knew that fighting one wouldn't be too hard, but defeating it was not the main problem at hand. Let's see it this way. You've all seen the amazing power of the Class 6 magical beast for yourself. It was easily capable of destroying several Earth Saint Masters at once. Why don't we each join together to fight the Class 6 magical beast, then in the end, we shall all fight for the cub. A middle-aged man from the Biyao clan spoke. No, that won't do. What would we do if one of us takes advantage of the situation to steal the cub? The captain of the mercenaries of the war god said. Who would dare do such a thing? With so many people within our ranks, we could easily encircle this person. One of the experts of the sect of Dragon and Tiger spoke. Fine, we'll do it this way then, prepare your men. In a flash, the several powers had all reached a conclusion. The only group that wasn't happy was the Moyun clan since their Heaven Saint Master ancestor was not here yet. If they could only delay for time until he arrived, then they could snatch the cub without anyone hoping to go against them. Unfortunately, every other person knew of this, so they didn't hesitate and went to mobilize their men quickly. Jian Shen had watched the group from the tree branch above. Since the Lanming clan feared accidentally causing trouble, they all moved back. Among this gathering of experts, not a single clan was someone they could bully. The group had already ordered 50 of their Earth Saint Masters to make a circle around the white tiger and then charge at the final moment when ready. The tiger lazily lay where it was before with its eyes closed as if uncaring for the situation occurring around it. However, Jian Shen understood the white tiger perfectly well. While the tiger had seemed as if it wasn't weak at all and was lazing about without fear, Jian Shen had a suspicion that the tiger couldn't stand. In the past 2 days, the tiger hadn't moved at all as if it had run out of energy. If the tiger truly had any fighting strength, it would have killed every single one of the humans that dared to act against its cub, but it had done nothing at all. This was the most doubtful point since an act like this was almost contradictory to a magical beast's instincts. Human, help my child. At this moment, the weak sound of a voice entered Jian Shen's ears. This sudden sound had caused Jian Shen to jump up with a quivering motion before falling down from the tree branch. Looking around himself vigilantly, Jian Shen saw no one around him. Jian Shen's heart skipped erratically as he flew down to the ground. He hadn't sensed anything nearby him, so when he heard someone's voice near his ear, he had been shocked beyond his wits. Human, I beg of you to save my child. At the same time, the same voice could be heard within Jian Shen's eardrums. The voice carried a pleading yet weak voice as if it was without energy. Quivering for a moment, Jian Shen quickly brushed off the shock to calm himself down before realizing the sound was coming from up ahead. What was more unbelievable was that it was coming from the tiger. Who are you? Jian Shen's lips had barely split apart, but he was sure that the owner of the voice would be able to hear him. I am called Rum Guinness, the magical beast right in front of you. The weak voice spoke. From the voice, Jian Shen could detect a feminine tone to it, but it was still very weak nonetheless. Hearing this, Jian Chen was shocked down to his core. He never would have thought that the voice he was hearing belonged to a magical beast. It was as if there was no distinction at all between a magical beast and a human, but Jian Chen had no idea just how he could understand. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind as Jian Chen's face grew stunned. Could you be a Class 7 magical beast and not a Class 6 magical beast? Back in Kargath Academy, Jian Chen had read many books about magical beasts. He knew that Class 7 magical beasts could transform into a humanoid shape and speak the human tongue without any distinction. According to what you humans classify us as, I am indeed a Class 7 magical beast. The tiger's weak voice rang out once more as if it was whispering something private to Jian Chen so that only the two of them could hear. A Class 7 magical beast, that's the equivalent to a saint ruler in the human realm. Jian Chen was in shock as his heart went into chaos. He just couldn't believe that this tiger that was blocking the cave behind it for 2 days was in fact a Class 7 magical beast. If news of how this was a Class 7 magical beast were to be spread out, then everyone would have run away. In the face of such a tiger, just who would dare try to steal the cub? Human, I beg you, help my child. The tiger's voice could be heard once more with a begging tone. Quickly reining in his shock, Jian Chen forced a smile on his face as he thought out loud to himself, you Class 7 magical beast ask of something impossible. I am but a mere Earth Saint Master, just how could I help you? With so many people here, you could ask any one of them. Human, from everyone here, I can only trust you. The rest are unreliable, would you help my child? The tiger asked once more. You don't even know me, just why do you think I am the most trustable person here? Jian Chen was amazed at the sloppiness of this tiger's reasoning. Intuition. We beasts have a keen sense of instinct. Without it, we would not be able to sense any other being stronger than us. My instinct does not lead me wrong, it tells me that among all humans here, the only one that I can trust is the one that will be able to protect my child from the rest. Human, will you help my child? Chapter 357, Winged Tiger God. Jian Chen couldn't help but feel awkward a little. He knew that this wouldn't be an easy assignment. Thinking for a moment, Jian Chen spoke, could you tell me just what problems you have, and how I should help you? At that moment, the sounds of yelling could be heard as the amalgamation of powers suddenly charged toward the tiger with all 50 Earth Saint Masters. Ho! The tiger's eyes gained a dangerous gleam before turning its head to the skies and roaring so loudly that the entire valley shook. All those within the valley couldn't help but shiver with dread as they began to fear for their lives. The tiger who hadn't climbed up for 2 days suddenly shot straight up. With a furious blood-thirsty glare, it leaped into the group of fighters. The tiger wasn't gigantic in scale, it was only 3 meters tall, but it had a terrifying amount of strength. With the tiger among the humans, it was like a wolf among lambs. With a single swipe, it caused a massacre since no one was able to evade its claws. Anyone that was hit by the claws naturally perished to them, and not a single person was able to strike it successfully. In a short 10 breaths, each and every single one of the 50 Earth Saint Masters from each faction had been eradicated. Not a single one was left, and no matter where the tiger turned, there was no one left to see. After killing all 50 Earth Saint Masters, the tiger glared dangerously at the leaders of the factions, causing everyone to flinch back in fear. Instead of advancing to kill off the rest, the tiger slowly turned around toward the cave, but the weakness in its eyes grew more and more clear. Slowly laying back down on the ground, the tiger lay its head on the ground and closed its eyes again. The leaders of the powers all looked at the white tiger with an equally white face. Unable to say anything for a very long time, they couldn't help but just stand there in utter shock. This is a magical beast that's far stronger than even a peak Class 6 magical beast. At last, one of the leaders spoke with a trembling voice in complete and utter shock. We're no match for it, what should we do? Even if we were to fight now with just us leaders, we wouldn't be an opponent. Another spoke. This is wrong. That magical beast is abnormal. With so much strength, why didn't it kill even us? For the sake protecting its child, this is abnormal behavior. That's right, this is far too strange. Take a look at that magical beast, just why is it so listless? It's even napping with its eyes closed. The rumors said that it was severely weak due to the wounds it has. Is that why it didn't fight all of us? After the shock of the recent massacre, everyone began to talk among themselves. A magical beast's protection of its cub was absolute and would definitely not let go of any human that would dare try to steal it away. Anyone that would try would face the wrath of the magical beast, so this white tiger's actions were a tad queer. At that moment, the tiger's voice came into Jian Chen's mind once again. Human, I cannot hold on for much longer. I beg of you to promise me that you will bring my child away from here. You are the only one among this crowd that I can trust. I do not wish for my child to be left in the hands of any other. Right now the tiger's voice was even weaker than before. Hearing this, Jian Chen's eyebrows furrowed before nodding his head. Fine, I promise to take care of your child. Human, I cannot thank you enough. My intuition tells me that entrusting my child to you is the most sensible path. I can also sense that whatever danger my child comes across in the future, you will be able to help him, is that right? The white tiger spoke happily. Correct. Jian Chen nodded without hesitation. Human, I, Rum Guinness, am truly grateful to you. Although this will add on to your troubles, I have no other solutions. Enter the cave and I will explain some things to you. The tiger spoke. Without hesitation, he flew out past the crowd and into the cave behind the tiger like a bolt of lightning. Fuck, who's that? Are they trying to die? That guy doesn't wish to live anymore. Not a single one of the group had tried to block Jian Chen and instead looked at him go toward the white tiger as if he was an idiot. However, much to everyone's complete and utter shock, Jian Chen managed to slide into the cave without any problems before disappearing from sight. The white tiger in front of the cave seemed to have completely disregarded Jian Chen as if it didn't even sense him. Is the tiger asleep or something? Plenty of men began to shift around uneasily as they all thought with jealousy about how easily Jian Chen had managed to slip in. Most of the men in fact had been tempted to follow in his footsteps. Then, two figures came bursting out of the crowd and flew for the cave behind the tiger with a speed comparable to Jian Chen's. This was all for the sake of the tiger cub inside the cave. Ho! Suddenly, the white tiger that had been motionless until now let out a ferocious roar as it swiped its claws. In an instant, the two figures had been cut in half in midair and fell to the floor in a rain of blood and gore. The two had been Earth Saint Masters, but they were easily killed as well. At the same time, this had also shut down any notions that anyone had about following Jian Chen in. After killing the two, the white tiger glared dangerously at the rest before slowly walking into the dark cave, disappearing from sight. The tiger's actions left everyone completely puzzled on why the tiger had left the first person that entered the cave untouched. Within the cave, a single night pearl hung overhead, illuminating the cave with some light. All around the cave was dark shadows, and in the corner of a cave, the tiny tiger cub was curled up sleeping. This sight was rather cute, but the wings on its back made it seem anything but normal. The white tiger slowly walked into the cave and looked affectionately at the tiger cub. Then, its entire body took on the shape of a middle-aged woman before Jian Chen's amazed eyes. The woman was rather tall at 2 meters in height, which was taller than Jian Chen by a head. Even her physique could comparable to Qin Zhao's. Jian Chen stared at this previously tiger-shaped woman in a daze. Although he knew that a Class 7 magical beast could transform into a human, this was still the very first time he had seen such an event. This was quite mystical, almost far too mystical for anyone to believe. If he were to see this sight in his previous life, he would have called this woman an evil spirit. An evil spirit that could cultivate and was a tiger. When Jian Chen came to this world, he knew that it was far different than the world he used to live in. The average lifespan for a person here was around 200 years old, an Earth Saint Master could live up to 500 years old, and a Heaven Saint Master could live up to 1,000 years old. Back in his old world, even the experts that stood on top of the world could only live up to 100 years old. Duguqiu by himself was the only being that had been able to live to be 200 years old. The newly changed woman embraced the cub affectionately before turning to look at Jianchen. Human, I thank you for looking after my child. Your kindness is something that I, Rum Guinness, will never be able to return. That is, would you tell me what trouble you came across? I can see that you are extremely weak. Could you be at the end of your lifespan? Jianchen didn't know what to ask. He still found it hard to believe this motherly-like woman was actually the ferocious white tiger from before. With a sorrowful sigh, the woman spoke. Human, I shall not hide anything from you. Allow me to explain everything in detail. I can only hope that you will not abandon my child after listening. You needn't worry, Jianchen, do not go back on my word after it is given. I am not one that breaks their word. Jianchen pledged. The woman's eyes grew bright as she looked at Jianchen. The weakness in her eyes could still be seen. I believe you, my intuition tells me that you are not a human of deception. The woman went silent for a moment as if she was remembering painful memories. On Cross Mountain, there lies a magical beast clan that commanded the entirety of the mountain with high-ranking magical beasts. This clan was called the Gilligan clan. Within the Gilligan clan, there are two kings that are separated between the land-based magical beasts and the sky-based magical beasts. Those of the tiger-based magical beasts and the rock-based magical beasts are considered royalty within the Gilligan clan. That is because the king of the land magical beasts was a golden fur tiger king, and the king of the sky magical beasts was the legendary rock. As for I was a high-ranking elder of the Gilligan clan. The father of this child was a golden fur tiger king who was the younger brother of the current king of the land magical beasts. Another class 7 magical beast as you would. The father and I loved each other for over 100 years, but it was not until 22 years ago that I grew pregnant. Maturing for 20 years, it wasn't until 2 years after that, much to the delight of the father and I had given birth to the race of the ancient emperor of tiger-based magical beasts, the winged tiger god. Chapter 358, Saving the White Tiger. The moment she spoke of the winged tiger god, Rum Guinness began to feel emotional. A winged tiger god is the king of the tiger-type magical beasts. They hold supreme status among us tiger-type magical beasts and are also a god of magical beasts. It was only because of a winged tiger god that all magical beasts were unified as one in the best. Leading us magical beasts over the oceans after being driven out by the Bai clan, we finally came to occupy this continent. When the father and I heard that our child was a winged tiger god, the two of us were happy beyond belief. Unable to contain his excitement, the father went off to tell the good news to his elder brother. However, the nightmare began at that point. We never would have thought that the elder brother would suddenly have evil thoughts invade his mind. He was afraid that the winged tiger god would soon be a threat to his power, and thus he tried to kill our child. For the sake of our child, the father and I both left the Gilligan clan, but the king had no intentions on letting us go. While keeping the matter of there being a winged tiger god a secret, he had come after us in person. My husband and I together were no match for him and had sustained heavy injuries as a result. However, in the final moments, my husband sacrificed himself to allow our child and I to escape. Right now, I can no longer feel the chi of my husband. He has already succumbed to the schemes of his elder brother. As she told her tale, Rum Guinness' face revealed a sorrowful look as tears flowed from her eyes. Taking my child and running away from the Cross Mountains, I came to this place. Perhaps it was divine providence, or the heavens wished that no harm should befall my child, but thanks to whichever supernatural event, I was able to come across a dependable human after half a year before I reached the end of my lifespan. Perhaps your coming was what the heavens have decreed? The end of your lifespan? Could you be injured beyond any sort of healing? Jianchen asked. With a grieved look, Rum Guinness spoke. Correct, back when the king of the Gilligan clan was fighting me, a pure dark energy was forced into my body. These days, there is nothing I can do while it ransacks my insides. This dark energy is from the king himself, and I found no way for me to find a way to stop it. All I can do now is to slowly watch my body be engulfed by this energy. If it were not for the superior advantage magical beasts have in their body strength, I would have died long ago. Right now, I only have 3 days at most. Jianchen couldn't help but feel shocked as he listened to Rum Guinness. Then is there no other way to eliminate the dark energy within you? Rum Guinness shook her head, there is none. The king of the Gilligan clan used his own energy to strike at me with the dark energy. Not only is it strong, but it has permeated my entire body and has destroyed any chance of me living. Even if the dark energy was purified, with my current injuries, would not have much longer to live. Then what if there was a radiant Saint Master, would that help you recover? Jianchen stared at Rum Guinness with a focused gaze. Shaking her head lightly once again, Rum Guinness spoke, this dark energy is not something that a normal radiant Saint Master could purify. If there was a chance, a 7th-class radiant Saint Master would be needed. But those are as rare as the feathers of a phoenix wing and not someone I could come across easily in the short amount of time I have left. Even if I could find one, they would not be able to heal me so easily. You do not understand the relationship between the Gilligan clan with you humans. There would be no way for them to assist me. Why not let me try to see if I could help? Jianchen spoke seriously to Rum Guinness. It is no use, human. You are merely wasting your energy. My time is not long here, you would best take my child and leave from this place. I will use the very last of my energy to help you get away from anyone and secure your safety while fleeing from this area. Rum Guinness spoke calmly with preparations of leaving this world. With that, she looked off in a distance with an unfocused gaze. Husband, you will not be alone for much longer, I will be coming soon. Let us watch over our child from the next world. Together. Rum Guinness' expression caused Jianchen to feel some grievance as well, but he spoke no words. Slowly closing his eyes, he began to control the radiant saint force in the world. Although he knew that he could not cure Rum Guinness' injuries, he could at least give it a try. A milky white glow of light could be seen forming in between Jianchen's hands. With time, it quickly began to glow even more dazzling with a gentle but strong light that was comforting to look at. The rays of light that could be felt from this ball of light would make anyone feel happy. Rum Guinness grew startled as the grieved expression was squashed. Staring at Jianchen, she spoke with shock, "You're a radiant Saint Master?" Just how? Rum Guinness had been wholly astounded by this sight. Jianchen knew that the dark energy within Rum Guinness was far too strong, so he had spared no effort in trying to condense the radiant saint force. Because of that, he wasn't able to clearly hear what Rum Guinness had said. In another moment, the radiant saint force had reached the best Jianchen could manage. Extending his arms, the radiant saint force ball slowly began to float toward Rum Guinness before engulfing her. Rum Guinness instantly grew shocked as the radiant saint force made its way inside her body. But after a moment, she shook her head with a sigh, "No, your radiant saint force is too weak. It's not enough to purify the dark energy left inside my body. At the very most, it can only delay it." With a light in his eyes, Jianchen asked, "How much longer will it be contained for?" Rum Guinness went silent for a moment as she tried to estimate before finally saying, "The radiant saint force is like the nemesis of the dark energy. If I can continue to gain enough radiant saint force and incorporate it into my body, then I can temporarily seal away the dark energy. However, in this time, I must focus entirely on trying to seal the energy and cannot move against any human." Hearing this, Jianchen felt some relief in his heart. He could not let this saint ruler like magical beast die here. Mustering up some emotions, he spoke, "Then how about this? I shall supply you with saint force, and you will try to seal away the dark energy within your body." A flicker of surprise crossed Rum Guinness' eyes before quickly growing calm once again. "No, if that is done, then I will not be able to use my energy to fight any human. With so many humans out there, you alone will not be enough to fight them all. Although you have hidden your presence, I can sense that your strength is not enough to deal with everyone out there. I can also sense that a Heaven Saint Master human is on his way here. He won't take long to get here. I must ensure that I kill him." The moment he heard that a Heaven Saint Master was on the way, Jianchen's face changed slightly. Although the white tiger in front of him could kill a Heaven Saint Master, her life would take a turn for the worse. With each movement she made, she would only harm herself even more. If she continued to exhaust her energy by fighting, then she wouldn't have enough to seal the dark energy later on. You needn't worry. I can deal with the men outside. I've also the ability to shake off any Heaven Saint Master after me. Right now you should use my Radiant Saint Force in order to seal the dark energy within your body. Jian Shen spoke staunchly before forming even more Radiant Saint Force for Rum Guinness to use to heal. Human, why do you help me to this extent? I have already entrusted my child to you with no other wish. Right now I only wish to join my husband in the next world. He is alone there. Rum Guinness' eyes had tears in them as a small guttural sound could be heard from her throat. You are a mother, that means you should take responsibility over your own child. Could it be that you wish for your child to grow without a mother or father? Do you not know the pain this would inflict on your child? This is something that cannot be fixed by any means. Thus, I will do all that I can to help you for the sake of your child. Or do you not wish to take revenge for your husband? Could it be that even after your husband was mercilessly killed by his elder brother, you will do nothing but to take it in silence? Or will you throw all your hopes of revenge onto your child to bear? Are you a mother or not? You are not thinking about your child. Jian Shen spoke passionately. By the time he reached the end of his rant, he had already began to growl slightly. He did not wish for Rum Guinness to die at all. That was because after listening to her tale, Jian Shen's emotions had been affected so that he sympathized with her. Another reason Jian Shen had for her survival was that he truly did not wish for a being that could rival a saint ruler to die. Rum Guinness grew speechless at Jian Shen's speech. With only the slightest of cries, Rum Guinness' determination on dying here had been ultimately shaken by his words. Sucking in a deep breath, Jian Shen said once more, we must take the time to quickly seal off the dark energy within your body. No matter what, you must live for the sake of your child. Chapter 359, Leaked Identity. Rum Guinness nodded her head in anguish before crying, I shall listen to you. For the sake of my child, I will live on. I will not allow such an arduous task to fall upon my child. I will definitely take revenge for my husband and look after my child grow old. Seeing Rum Guinness have a new resolve over her life, Jian Shen let out a sigh in relief. He had managed to rescue a saint ruler being potentially. The dark energy has already entered my bone marrow. The Radiant Saint Force is coincidentally the bane of it, so you will be able to force out the dark energy with it. Allow me to deal with the next step. Rum Guinness spoke calmly towards Jian Shen afterwards. Afterwards, Rum Guinness and Jian Shen spent 2 hours on trying to use the Radiant Saint Force to seal away the dark energy within her body. At the same time, the Radiant Saint Force would sometimes fail to make any progress since while the Radiant Saint Force was effective against the dark energy, it was still too weak. Not too long after, however, Rum Guinness had lost her ability to fight as a Class 7 magical beast since she couldn't use the energy within her now. She would have to fight using only her own physical strength, but that would be far less than before. An hour later, Jian Shen had finally managed to allow some of the injuries on Rum Guinness' body recover before preparing to take Rum Guinness out and away from here. Human, I can no longer use my strength to protect my child. You should take him instead. Tears formed in Rum Guinness' eyes, reluctant to part from her child just yet. Jian Shen looked at the still sleeping cub and nodded solemnly, you needn't worry. I will do my best for your child, and when I can reach the 7th class Radiant Saint Master level, I will clear away the dark energy within you. Emotionally, Rum Guinness looked at Jian Shen, human, I can sense that you mean what you say. You truly care for this mother and child. This kindness of yours is something I will never forget. One more thing, since my child is a winged tiger god, his growth rate will be rather slow. Swallowing valuable resources will allow his growth to accelerate, and when he grows up, he will have the ability to find them for himself. After explaining several more things of importance, Rum Guinness had made sure to remind Jian Shen that news of her cub being a winged tiger god must not be revealed. Carefully remembering every single detail given to him, Jian Shen spoke, I know what to do, but we should leave now. The longer we idle here, the more variables there will be. With that, Jian Shen spent no more time and held the tiger in his left hand with a bundle of clothes covering its body. Then, with a leap, he flew outside in an attempt to escape. He has the Class 6 cub, don't let him escape. Unfortunately, there had been a sharp-eyed person who had immediately guessed what the bundle of clothes was. In an instant, everyone had burst into motion. The remaining 50 Earth Saint Masters flew forward to block Jian Chen's path. A fierce killing intent appeared in Jian Chen's eyes as he instantly materialized the light wind sword into his hand with a glow of azure and violet to the sword. Seeing only the flash of a sword and the impeccable speed of Jian Chen, the 3 Earth Saint Masters who were blocking him were brought down in an instant. The surrounding people had already been seduced by the Class 6 cub. Each one of them could only stare at the bulging bag that Jian Chen had. While they couldn't see what was inside, at this point, that wasn't necessary. Jian Chen had been able to enter the cave without being obstructed by the white tiger. Then, the white tiger had went into the cave for a long amount of time without any sounds of battle being heard. This made everyone believe there had to be some sort of relationship between the white tiger and Jian Chen. When they saw Jian Chen dash out of the cave, it didn't take a genius to know that Jian Chen was taking the Class 6 cub with him. Jian Chen's instant takedown of 3 Earth Saint Masters hadn't made anyone afraid. The remaining group of Earth Saint Masters had already resolved to block him and encircle around him with their saint weapons. Fending off the attacks with his sword, Jian Chen's eyes grew even more fierce as the azure and violet glows of light increased in intensity as well. The sword began to blur in the air as it filled the area with its mirror images, ready to make a bloody pathway for him to escape. By now, Jian Chen was already a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master with even more strength than before. With the help of the sword spirits, he was like a wolf within a flock of sheep. No one would be able to block him. The cub's with him, we must stop him or else the cub will get away. All great Saint Masters retreat. Earth Saint Masters, form a circle around him. Even if he is an Azura, we must not allow him to get away. At the commands of the higher-ranking members, all of the great Saint Masters drew back while the Earth Saint Masters flew forward. In a flash, Jian Chen was completely surrounded by Earth Saint Masters. There were around 10 of them that were also blocking Jian Chen's path. Stand in my path and perish. Jian Chen barked out loud as he advanced. His left hand held the cub entrusted to him by Rum Guinness, and his right hand held the light wind sword. In an instant, the azure and violet light on his sword was thrust in 10 different motions toward the ones that blocked his path. By the time Jian Chen had swung his sword, very few could see that he had moved while the rest couldn't even react before the sword stabbed through their throats. For those that had brought up their saint weapons to block his sword, the light wind sword had already stabbed straight through it and forced them to fall back with blood leaking out from their throats. In a single instant, the 10 Earth Saint Masters that went up to block Jian Chen had instantly crumbled. In the next moment, 10 more Earth Saint Masters came forward with their saint weapons ready to chop and block Jian Chen's escape path. With a sneer, Jian Chen activated the Heaven's Stolen Fortune and increased his strength 3 times over. His sword flickered and blurred mid-swing as a series of metallic clangs could be heard when Jian Chen blocked sword after sword. But each time his light wind sword clashed with one of the swords instantly broke apart to reveal jagged edges. With the saint weapons damaged, the owners instantly spat out a mouthful of blood before gasping in shock. A few of the men had stopped when they saw the azure and violet glow. In an instant, they cried out, "His saint weapon has an azure and violet glow, crap! It's Jian Chen, the first-place ranker of the gathering of the mercenaries." Like a stone that caused thousands of ripples, everyone instantly looked at Jian Chen in shock and disbelief. While this was thousands of miles away from Mercenary City, it was still relatively close for people to know of Jian Chen's name. He was a figure whose name was like a thunderclap, and after becoming the king of mercenaries, countless of people knew of his name. Thus, people came to know that his saint weapon carried an azure and violet glow to it and could easily break the saint weapon of a great saint master. By now, the azure and violet sword qi was Jian Chen's symbol since no other person on the Tianyuan continent controlled such glows. In fact, no one had ever even heard of such an energy before. What had caused even more shock, however, was the fact that it was the king of mercenaries that had snatched the Class 6 cub. This result was enough to cause everyone to be shocked and not knowing what to do. Every single king of mercenaries would at the very least become a Heaven Saint Master or higher. This was not someone they could afford to offend. Once Jian Chen's name had been announced, everyone began to argue louder and louder on what to do. In a moment, practically everyone in the Thousand Poison Valley knew that the king of mercenaries, Jian Chen, was here. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as he listened to his identity get announced to the world. There was no way for the Jetta clan and Sher family back in Mercenary City to not know about this. The amount of people here were far too many. Jian Chen had counted around 1,000. There would be no way for him to realistically deal with them all. Without any more hesitation, Jian Chen flew forward while everyone was stunned in an attempt to escape. Quick, after him. It doesn't matter who he is, but he has the cub. One of the commanders called out. Stop him, don't let him run away. We have so many men, we must take that Class 6 cub. The Class 6 cub was something that everyone desperately wanted, so the major powers had decided to overlook Jian Chen's identity. This Class 6 cub was far too precious to give up. The Earth Saint Masters hesitated for a moment before biting their lips in frustration and running after him. They all knew that Jian Chen was strong and did not wish to be his enemy, but they had no choice but to obey the order. After running away for some time, Jian Chen had made use of the illusionary flash to increase his speed so that his pursuers could only watch Jian Chen grow further and further away. The heads of the powers could only look on helplessly as they had some men carefully enter the cave. Unfortunately, the cave was empty. There was no Class 6 cub, or even the mother. Chapter 360, Fighting a Heaven Saint Master within the Thousand Valley. Jian Chen had used the illusionary flash so he could come to the predetermined place where he and Rum Guinness had spoke of. Not too long after he had arrived, a white figure had leaped into the area with a speed that was barely slower than the illusionary flash. In a short moment, the white figure came to a stop before Jian Chen's eyes before turning into the white tiger, Rum Guinness. Rum Guinness looked at Jian Chen holding her cub with a reluctant look as from before. With another sigh, she spoke, "Your strength still astounds me. Even with many people there, no person was able to stop you. I've heard from the other humans that you are called Jian Chen, correct?" My name is indeed Jian Chen," Jian Chen replied. "Then I will call you Jian Chen from here on out. Jian Chen, I can no longer use my inner energy to fight and will have to rely upon my physical strength. I cannot even assist you since the Gilligan clan will surely find me if I cause too much of a disturbance. The next few days will require me to hide away, thus, I must implore you to look after my child once again." Rum Guinness spoke this time in a human voice, but because of her true tiger form, the voice sounded neither like a man nor a woman. Jian Chen nodded his head seriously. "Be at peace, I will definitely look after your child. Wait until I have the ability to cure you of your dark energy." Then, Jian Chen had another thought. How should I come and find you later?" Revealing a tuft of tiger hair, she dripped some blood on it, dyeing it completely red. Handing it over to Jian Chen, she spoke, "If you wish to find me, then have my child drip his own blood on this, it will guide you to me." Jian Chen carefully took the piece of fur into his hands. "Jian Chen, the items you use to disguise yourself may protect yourself from a Heaven Saint Master, but it will do no good to those of the Saint Ruler realm or Class 7 magical beasts. You would do well to be careful." The tiger spoke. Hearing that, Jian Chen held up a hand to touch his face with a bitter smile. His disguise had been perfect and had allowed him to travel anywhere with ease. He hadn't thought that Saint Rulers would be able to ignore this completely. With a final look toward her cub and a few words to Jian Chen, Rum Guinness disappeared. Woo, 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 the cub that Jian Chen was holding suddenly opened its eyes as it began to cry out loud. Unable to detect whether it was because of the pain of having the mother leave him or the goodbye itself, the cub began to struggle as it tried to stand up on its own power. Jianshan gently caressed the cub's head as if to soothe the cub into safety while showing a kind expression on his face. Jianshan had no desire to stay here any longer. The valley was no longer safe for him to stay, therefore the only choice was to quickly leave the area. Leaping up into the trees, Jianshan began to borrow the tree branches to get farther and farther away. Right behind Jianshan, the group of men in front of the cave could only shake their heads in regret and disappointment. A Class 6 magical beast had been right in front of them, but it had been taken away by the gathering of the mercenaries' winner, Jianshan. This was something they still could not accept. Suddenly, the strong qi of a person could be felt from far away as someone with unbelievable strength arrived right in front of the cave. In a flash, the sound of wind suddenly stopping could be heard as a crane-haired elder appeared in midair. Floating, the elder looked down on everyone with his sharp eyes without any feelings in them as if he was a king over the mass. "It's in heaven, Saint Master." The group went into an uproar as everyone began to feel the giant pressure radiating from the heaven Saint Master. Everyone could only look up with both fear and respect reflected in their eyes at the elder. Seeing the elder, the Moyun clansmen were all overjoyed as the leader spoke out, "Bai Yuanjin greets our ancestor." "We greet our ancestor." The Moyun clansmen all followed Elder Bai's example and knelt down with a reverent pose. The Heaven Saint Master took a look around before speaking calmly, "Where is the Class 6 cub?" "Honored ancestor, the Class 6 cub was taken away from us." Elder Bai spoke with concern toward the Heaven Saint Master expert that was floating right in front of him. Hearing this, a flash appeared in the elder's eyes. "Do you know which faction took it?" "Ancestor, the one who took the Class 6 cub is the king of mercenaries, Jianshan. His strength was far too much for any one of us to stop him." Elder Bai spoke. "Jianshan, so it was him." The ancestor of the Moyun clan furrowed his eyebrows in hesitation before a dangerous glint appeared. "Which way did Jianshan go?" "That way." Elder Bai pointed off in the direction. Right now he could only hope that his ancestor would be able to catch up to Jianshan and claim the Class 6 cub for their own clan. The ancestor immediately flew off in the direction pointed out to him and quickly went out of sight. "Quickly, report this back to the sect. We can only rely on the sect elders to help us. Hurry up and hire some men to come over, report this to the patriarch straight away." The Heaven Saint Master from the Moyun clan caused an annoyance to the other powers who quickly tried to report back to their own factions. At this moment, Jianshan was using the illusionary flash to transverse across the valley. His path was not in a linear direction and had oftentimes changed directions to throw off anyone chasing him. 2 hours later, Jianshan had traveled several hundred kilometers. Stopping by the side of a valley, Jianshan stopped for a moment to regain his energy. With the cub sleeping by his feet, Jianshan began to recover his saint force. With the large battle and his use of his illusionary flash, Jianshan had already used up 2/3 of his saint force. With his identity revealed and a Heaven Saint Master most likely after him, Jianshan would need to conserve all of the strength he could to fight a Heaven Saint Master. The dog-sized tiger cub obediently lay by Jianshan's leg with a slumbering snore. His white wings were folded against his fur in a way that made them quite hard to see without looking for them. Jianshan sat in a cross-legged position with the sword spirits trying to rapidly absorb the energy within the monster cores to help Jianshan recover. Under the disguise of the weeds, he was especially hidden from sight. 4 hours later, a boom could be heard as a gray-robed man suddenly flew overhead Jianshan and then out of sight. Jianshan could sense the figure fly by overhead while he was recovering his saint force with a nervous expression. "He is truly fast, this must be the Heaven Saint Master from the Moyun clan. I didn't think that even after changing my direction so many times, he would be able to catch up with me. It's a good thing I am hidden." However, Jianshan's face changed as he thought, "Not good, I'm sure I'm already found then." Jianshan immediately leaped out from the weeds and used the illusionary flash to take him and the tiger cub away. He had been recovering using the energy from the monster cores when the Heaven Saint Master appeared. With such a short distance, there was no way for such a high-level expert to miss the ripples of energy coming from the monster cores. Sure enough, just as Jianshan left, the Heaven Saint Master suddenly turned around and discovered Jian Chen running away. With a renewed burst of energy, the Heaven Saint Master chased after him. Using the illusionary flash, Jian Chen was quickly traveling through the Thousand Poison Valley. Since the terrain was complicated and the ground uneven, the true power of the illusionary flash could not be revealed and he was unable to shake off the rapidly catching up Heaven Saint Master. Seeing the Heaven Saint Master get closer and closer, Jian Chen gained a fierce look in his eyes as he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Holding the still sleeping tiger cub in his left hand, he flew at the Heaven Saint Master and brought out his light wind sword in his right hand with the azure and violet glow shining on it. In these 4 hours, Jian Chen had recovered about 80% of his saint force. Now that he couldn't escape, it was better to put his all into the fight. Plus, he had never fought against a Heaven Saint Master before, so he could use this chance to test just how long he could last against one. The Heaven Saint Master was about 30 meters away from Jian Chen and floated above him. Staring down onto Jian Chen, he looked at the tiger cub in his left hand and spoke with a slightly happy expression. Jian Chen, I don't wish to be enemies with you. My Moyan clan is in need of that Class 6 cub, so I must ask you to resign with parting yourself from the cub. My Moyan clan will definitely reward you with a handsome prize and help you unconditionally within our scope of power. Chapter 361, Fierce Battle. Jian Chen didn't hesitate to decline the offer. My apologies, but I am protecting this white tiger. As long as I, Jian Chen, am alive, I will not allow anyone to lay a hand on him. Jian Chen, why would you go through such trouble? A magical beast usually has an exceptionally slow mature rate. A Class 6 magical beast could take at the very fastest 10 years, or 100 years at its slowest to mature. Then if we were to include the countless resources, it would be an extravagant cost. With your talent, it would take another 10 or so years for you to become a saint ruler. I'm sure, by then, you could tame another docile Class 6 magical beast without having to go through the costs of raising one yourself while avoiding any trouble with our Moyan clan. The Heaven Saint Master clearly did not wish to be enemies with Jian Chen and was hoping that Jian Chen would take the initiative to give up. That was because every single king of mercenaries have always been a Heaven Saint Master at the very least, and a saint ruler for the vast majority, meaning that Jian Chen was someone they couldn't afford to offend later. I, Jian Chen, am not a man who goes back on his words. You might as well give up on those thoughts. I will take this cub away from anyone else. Jian Chen's eyes grew cold as he prepared to fight without fear of the Heaven Saint Master. The ancestor of the Moyan clan gave a small sigh as he spoke. Jian Chen, the Class 6 cub is something my Moyan clan desires. If you wish to continue on with this charade, then you will be offending our Moyan clan. The fierce glow in Jian Chen's eyes grew colder and colder before they seemed to have intensified into a sharp amount of qi toward the elder. If you dare make a move, then consider your Moyan clan dead to me. There will be no compromise. I will annihilate your Moyan clan. With that, the ancestor's face grew startled for a moment before he too glared back at Jian Chen. Jian Chen, you aren't thinking about what you are saying. Although you are talented, but even with your strength, you do not have the qualifications to say such words to me. If you don't believe me, then feel free to see for yourself. All you have to do is make a move, and your Moyan clan will be enemies with me until death. If you do not wish to see your Moyan clan come across any trouble, then take a step back. I, Jian Chen, will naturally do nothing in that case. Jian Chen's stare was as sharp as his sword, and his words left room for no doubt. The Moyan clan's ancestor grew dark at the very thought of a tiny Earth Saint Master threatening him. Despite being an extremely talented one, he was still not someone that he could consider an opponent. There was a clear divide between an Earth Saint Master and a Heaven Saint Master, almost as different as the heavens and earth themselves. He had previously been polite with Jian Chen due to his fear of Jian Chen's talent and wished to be on good relations with him in hopes that they could one day be friends with a saint ruler. But with these threatening words, the ancestor could not have those thoughts any longer. He was a Heaven Saint Master with an illustrious status. On the Tianyuan continent, saint rulers were existences that even Earth saint masters would have no choice but to be extremely respectful to, unlike Jian Chen, who had decided to give no face toward a heaven saint master. Not only had Jian Chen's attitude failed to cower to the ancestor, but it had instead infuriated him. With a thunderous expression, he spoke, What an audacious brat. A Class 6 cub is something our Moyun clan needs. If you do not wish to hand it over, then I will personally come and retrieve it. With that, the ancestor reached out his hand with an frantic amount of energy bursting toward his arm. A giant yellow-colored sword appeared, symbolizing him as an earth attribute cultivator, before he swung it at Jian Chen. With a small whistling sound, the heaven's stolen fortune had increased his strength by threefold, giving him enough strength to outrival even a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master and contend against a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. With an impressive aura, he flew at the ancestor with no fear at all. The light wind sword danced as the Earth Saint force was scattered apart by Jian Chen before reforming straight away. Without any further impediments, Jian Chen shot toward the ancestor and stabbed for the ancestor's throat with his sword. Snorting, the Moyun clan's ancestor raised his sleeved hands. In an instant, the energy around him gathered on the ground around him before condensing into a 2-meter earthen pillar that flew at Jian Chen's head. Waving his light wind sword, Jian Chen borrowed the power of the sword spirits and shredded apart the pillars like tofu before finally arriving at the ancestor's height. With another flash of silver light, the sword flew at the ancestor's throat once more. So you have some skill after all. The eyes of the ancestor flashed once more as the earth-attributed saint weapon in his hand moved to block the sword. Ding! A crisp sound rang through the air as Jian Chen's light wind sword was parried. The sword did not stop there, and with a short burst of strength, it disappeared into hundreds of mirror images that stabbed at the Moyun clan's ancestor. The ancestor grew serious at the speed of Jian Chen. This was a speed that even a heaven saint master would have to be cautious around. In a short moment, Jian Chen's sword had already reached an inconceivable speed as it struck out dozens of times, forcing his opponent to be unable to retaliate. Soon after, Jian Chen's figure had already dropped down from the air and landed back on the ground. The ancestor was growing quite unsightly by now as he looked down at his own saint weapon. On it, there were a few dozen tiny holes on it. His saint weapon to be damaged to such an extent caused him a tidal wave of shock, forcing him into disbelief. To have such strength like that is quite terrifying. The elder thought with some fear toward Jian Chen. Right after touching the ground, Jian Chen leaped into the air as he tried to fly at the still floating ancestor with his light wind sword. This time, the ancestor did not wait around to block and took the initiative to gather even more saint force to his saint weapon. With another wave of his sword, a tremendous amount of earth-attributed sword chi shot toward Jian Chen as a way of attack. Since he was in midair, Jian Chen had nowhere to run and could only take the sword chi head-on. The sides collided, resulting in a large bang as the shockwave sent Jian Chen careening into the ground with an equally loud boom. Woo, woo! The tiger that had been wrapped around Jian Chen's chest had been shaken awake with a baleful cry as it began to move its 4 paws against Jian Chen's chest. Opening its eyes slowly to reveal the treasure-like pupils, it began to look at the outside world with a curious expression. In order to protect the tiger wrapped around his chest, Jian Chen had smashed into the ground with a miserably pale face. This strike from the Heaven Saint Master had taken a toll on him. Suddenly, a tremendous amount of pressure originating from the floating elder filled the air. The earth-attributed saint weapon had already transformed into pure saint force and came down on Jian Chen ruthlessly. However, this strike from the Heaven Saint Master was one that Jian Chen was not willing to accept. Dodging it with his illusionary flash, he swiftly blew past the strike. Bang! The heavens shook as dirt flew everywhere around the trembling earth. Where Jian Chen had once been, there was a 5-meter crater that was several meters deep. A black figure appeared to the side. Jian Chen had been completely unaffected by the ancestor's show of strength. In an instant, the light wind sword flitted forward and struck out at every single place simultaneously with a speed so fast that the entire area was filled with its mirror images. What a fast sword! The ancestor thought to himself gravely. Jian Chen's sword was truly too fast, and with each collision from the swords, the ancestor's own weapon was slowly being riddled with even more holes that in turn caused damage to him. Although it didn't cause enough damage to him at the time, if the battle went on for any longer, then it would soon turn life-threatening and could even handicap him. A layer of saint force wrapped around the ancestor's body defensively. Although Jian Chen had his sword with the azure and violet sword qi, the saint force would still be able to slow it down. Hurriedly blocking each strike from Jian Chen while retreating, the ancestor tried to widen the gap between him and Jian Chen. With an explosive shout, the sword in his hand burst into a dazzling show of earth saint force before immediately filling the entire area and pressing down on Jian Chen. This attack caused Jian Chen's body to feel incredibly heavy as if he was carrying a large mountain, making movement difficult. Jian Chen, you forced me to use my advanced earth tier battle skill, you should be proud. The Moyun clan ancestor didn't mince any words and immediately slashed down toward Jian Chen. Another gleam of light appeared in Jian Chen's eyes as he pushed the heaven's stolen fortune to the limit. The previously threefold increase had increased so that he could now beat most sixth cycle Earth Saint Masters and smashed his light wind sword into the ancestor's own sword. A blast of energy wreaked havoc in the area as the surrounding environment was blown apart. The mud on the ground flew into the air, and the valleys themselves began to shake so much that a fissure opened up on the ground. The Heaven Saint Master that was just using an Earth tier battle skill had instantly been heavily damaged by Jian Chen. His face immediately grew pale as his body flew backward while a trail of blood left his lips. Woo, woo, the tiger that was still wrapped around Jian Chen's chest began to cry out even more as his entire body felt pain from the shockwave. An intense killing intent entered the ancestor's eyes. The recent attack from Jian Chen had caused a flash of fear to enter the ancestor's face. Since he and Jian Chen were enemies now, the best method would be to kill him now before he matured any more. This, or else there would be danger for the Moyun clan in the future. Chapter 362, Inflicting Serious Damage to the Heaven Saint Master, Jian Chen. If you truly desire to annihilate my Moyun clan, then do not blame me for being merciless. For the sake of my clan, I must kill you. The ancestor spoke coldly as the Earth Saint weapon began to billow with even more sword qi than earlier before he struck out at Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen had already taken heavy damage, his fighting strength was still frightfully terrifying. Immediately shooting up from the ground, he dodged the strike of sword qi. Bang! The ancestor's sword qi strike was almost like an explosive bomb as it exploded right where Jian Chen was. As the ground exploded and sent dirt flying everywhere, the following grass and mud covered the skies. Within the dust, Jian Chen was like a bullet as he sped toward the ancestor. With his light wind sword emitting sword qi as well, the azure and violet sword qi on the blade was exceptionally eye-catching. The elder from the Moyun clan had a look of contempt. You cling to life like a praying mantis. However, you are only just an Earth Saint Master and not an opponent against me. Resistance is futile. With that, the elder waved his sword as another wave of sword qi flew from his sword toward Jian Chen. Gritting his teeth without a sound, Jian Chen's eyes grew as sharp as a sword before instantly disappearing away from view with his illusionary flash. As he dodged the sword qi from the ancestor, Jian Chen reappeared by his side and thrust his sword forward. With a cold sneer, the giant sword in the ancestor's hand transformed into a dazzling light of yellow before the energy surged from within, causing the space around the sword to distort. At the same time, another large amount of pressure came toward Jian Chen and pressed down on him like a heavy stone. The ancestor was using his advanced Earth tier battle skill once more. With his strength as a Heaven Saint Master, there would be no need to spend any time to prepare for its usage, therefore it could be used almost instantly. Allow me to see just how strong your determination to live is. The ancestor's eyes grew dark as a fierce killing intent flooded them. In an instant, the Earth Attribute Saint weapon flashed for a moment before flying straight for Jian Chen like a bolt of lightning. At this current moment, there was only a single meter between Jian Chen and the ancestor. Thanks to the severe damage from earlier and the pressure from the ancestor, mobility was quite hard. Every step required an equally large amount of energy, and with the ancestor striking at him, it was impossible for him to try and attack the ancestor. There was a strange smile on Jian Chen's face before the light wind sword in his hand suddenly flew away from his hand and transformed into a sword that seemed as if it had gained a soul. Against all expectations, the sword had begun to fly through the air before striking for the heart of the Heaven Saint Master. PCH. Suddenly, there was an extreme change across the elder's face from the unavoidable blow. The light wind sword had managed to pierce straight through his heart and explode out from his back with a bloody mess. At the very same time Jian Chen's sword had pierced through the ancestor's heart, the giant sword had managed to stab into Jian Chen's chest as well. The energy within the sword had begun to wreak havoc within his intestines, shaking his inner organs and causing significant damage to his entire body, inner and outer. Spitting out a large mist of blood, Jian Chen's face grew unimaginably white. Meanwhile, the blood on his chest had already started to drip down onto the pure white fur of the tiger cub and stain it red. The sword spirits within Jian Chen's dantian shook before beginning to emit an attractive force. Straight away, the energy that had been causing Jian Chen's body to take damage were immediately sucked in by sword spirits, preventing them from causing any more harm. The ancestor had received an incredibly serious wound now that his heart had been obliterated. There was also some chi left within his body from when the light wind sword had ran straight through him. Although he was a Heaven Saint Master, his inner organs were weaker than Jian Chen's. In contrast, the energy he had left behind in Jian Chen's body was far stronger than the energy that Jian Chen had left within his. However, this was still the very first time he had sustained such a heavy injury that he could not take. Spitting out a large amount of blood, he looked at Jian Chen with a dark glare. It is no wonder you are the king of mercenaries of the last gathering of the mercenaries. To have such strength, I've underestimated you if you could force me to such a disastrous state. Even when you die, you should be proud of this fact. With that, the ancestor clenched tightly to the sword that was still in Jian Chen's chest. Just as he planned to cut Jian Chen in two, an ear-splitting sound could be heard from behind him, filling his face with shock. PCH. The throat of the ancestor was split apart as blood came rushing out of the new wound. The light wind sword had finally made its way back after piercing the elder's heart. Since the elder was not prepared to defend against such an attack, it had worked. A look of horror flitted across his face as he gave up on his attempt to kill Jian Chen. Then, flying at full speed, he tried to run away from Jian Chen while reclaiming his sword. Whoosh! A loud ear-piercing sound could be heard once more as the light wind sword seemingly stopped its backward momentum and flew at the Heaven Saint Master with a renewed speed. The light wind sword slashed across the elder's leg, and with a torrent of rain, the severed limbs of his legs could be seen falling down from the sky. The ancestor let out a pain-filled cry as he flew 500 meters into the air so that he was nothing more than a speck of dust. As he flew away, he could only look at his severed legs on the ground in abject horror and disbelief. Jian Chen was staring at the ancestor's tiny dot in the sky with a surprising amount of shock. A Heaven Saint Master's vitality was indeed extremely strong if his light wind sword was able to pierce through both his heart and throat without him dying. This revelation of information was stunning. Not only were Heaven Saint Masters strong, but their tenacity was terrifying. It was unfortunate that the soul sword could only travel 200 meters away from Jian Chen. With the Moyan clan ancestor being 500 meters away, there was no way for his sword to travel that far. This was because after 200 meters, his control over the light wind sword would shrink, and once it reached the 300-meter mark, he would lose all control over it. The light wind sword returned to Jian Chen's hand as a ball of silver light. Despite his pale face and his serious wounds, Jian Chen did not want the elder to escape that easily. An azure and violet light escaped from his light wind sword before shooting out from Jian Chen's mental command. Floating high in the air, the ancestor could only look down on Jian Chen with a fearful expression. He knew that his current state was dreadful with there being a hole where his heart used to be. This alone was already nearly crippling, but then he now had another hole where his throat was. His body was badly mangled, but in the face of everything, he had not died yet. Seeing the azure and violet glows of light shoot for him, the ancestor could only hastily throw his body out of the way and try to dodge the blows. Then, casting a poisonous glare at Jian Chen, he flew off. Right now he had 2 major injuries on high body. Although they would not kill him, they still required a hasty healing. If he remained here, he would fall prey to another one of Jian Chen's strange tricks and end up dead. Running away from Jian Chen would leave Jian Chen no options other than to look at him get farther and farther away. Now that the ancestor was gone, Jian Chen could let out a sigh in relief. After today's battle, he could be sure that his strength was similar to that of a Heaven Saint Master. If he had not the soul sword to make any unbreakable guard breakable, then he would have found it impossible to beat a Heaven Saint Master. This type of expert wouldn't be as paranoid about the azure and violet sword chi since they weren't like Earth Saint Masters. It was only when their saint weapons were to be damaged by it that they would worry. It seems that I must find a way to allow the sword spirits to heal as fast as I can. If I could only heal them enough, then my azure and violet sword chi would surely grow stronger. Jian Chen spoke as he tried to sit up painfully. Right now, the azure and violet sword chi weren't a major problem to any Heaven Saint Master, so he would need to find a way to heal the sword spirit strengths. This way, not only would the sword spirits be stronger, but the amount of assistance he could receive would be higher too. The tiger cub that was wrapped around Jian Chen still could smell the dripping blood from Jian Chen and seemed to look as if it was hungry. Resting for a moment, Jian Chen placed the cub down on the ground for a moment before sitting down and using the Radiant Saint Force to heal his wounds. Woo, woo, just as the tiger cub left his spot on Jian Chen's chest, he grew unhappy immediately. Starting to cry, his 4 paws began to scratch the ground before ultimately climbing up Jian Chen's body with Herculean strength and lapped up his blood hungrily. Seeing the behavior of the tiger cub, Jian Chen didn't know whether to laugh or cry before feeling a sharp pain in his chest. Taking off his blood-soaked clothes, Jian Chen set the tiger on the ground lightly next to it to do as it pleased. This way, the white tiger cub wouldn't bother Jian Chen and could lick and gnaw at his bloody clothes with vigor as if it enjoyed the taste and smell of it. Chapter 363, Inescapable Net, 1. After the battle, Jian Chen continued to use the Radiant Saint Force to heal himself. However, since he had used a lot of his spirit to try and seal away the dark energy within Rum Guinness, he did not have enough power to completely recover from his own wounds in one go. After healing himself to a half state, Jian Chen stopped the process and took the tiger cub in order to look for a cave to hide in and resume the process of healing himself. While the ancestor of the Moyun clan had escaped with grave injuries, he still knew where Jian Chen was. Jian Chen didn't know when the elder would be back with reinforcements, so he had to quickly heal. As long as he had enough strength, he would be able to escape. If he didn't, then he wouldn't be able to run far. In the case that another Heaven Saint Master were to give chase, he would not be able to cope. Jian Chen spent the rest of the day trying to regain all of his strength before attempting to use the Radiant Saint Force to heal himself once more. Now that Jian Chen had more spirit than before, his ability to control the Radiant Saint Force was even better now. Despite the severity of his injuries, it only took him another hour to completely heal himself. After his wounds were fully healed, Jian Chen didn't stop to rest. Immediately taking out a Class 5 monster core, he began to recover the rest of his Saint Force. After using the Heaven's stolen fortune to multiply his strength by 3-fold, the amount of Saint Force that he had used had been hefty. Right now his Saint Force was still not in tip-top shape and was slowly recovering from his exhausted state. Recovering the Saint Force was a slow process. It was only 10 hours later that Jian Chen's Saint Force had been fully recovered. Slowly standing up from the ground, Jian Chen changed into a new set of clothes from his space ring before taking the still sleeping white tiger out of the cave. It was well past the midnight hours, and the poisonous fog around the valley was even more noticeable than before. Yet, it was also weaker in potency as well. This type of poison would pose no problem to an Earth Saint Master at all. Just past the foliage of the trees, Jian Chen could clearly see the blanket of stars and the bright white moon hanging overhead, shining down on the lands. Jian Shen was still carrying the sleeping white tiger as he looked around the area. After confirming that it was safe, he left from the area under the guise of the dark night. Jian Shen quickly flew through the forest at a rapid pace. He had already discovered that there were torches lit from every direction, meaning the other factions had already blockaded the entire area and must have hired countless of men to comb through the forest to look for the white tiger cub. Knowing that the Thousand Poison Valley was no longer safe, Jian Shen could no longer stay here. Using the cover of night to leave the valley, he began to travel through the forest with the illusionary flash. 4 hours later, Jian Shen had traveled a far distance away where the outskirts of a city could be seen to Jian Shen. Immediately dashing for the city, Jian Shen arrived at the wall of the city before silently and sneakily climbing over it and into the city. Because it was night time, the city was extraordinarily quiet with not a single inn open. Even the streets were cold and desolate without a single person. Holding the tiger cub close to him as if he was smuggling something, Jian Shen quickly walked by a quiet-looking inn. Jumping up to the 3rd floor, he quietly slipped inside through the window without being detected. Within the inn, Jian Shen set the tiger cub on the bed and then took out another monster core to restore his saint force. On the second morning, Jian Shen had changed his appearances to become a 30-year-old youth once more before hiding the tiger cub beneath his clothes and leaving the tavern. One of the waitresses to the inn stared at Jian Shen's back with a suspicious stare. If my memory isn't wrong, I could have sworn that I didn't see him yesterday. Could he have snuck in when I wasn't looking? After leaving, Jian Shen took himself on a stroll around the city before entering a food store. Shop owner, do you have any fresh magical beast milk for sale? This shop owner was a 40-year-old skinny but scholarly man. When he heard Jian Shen, he turned around without batting an eye at the bulge of Jian Shen's stomach. Yes, naturally, I have some for sale. Whichever type of magical beast milk the honored customer wants, our store will have it. Then let's have a look at your tiger milk. Make them all as fresh and as many as possible, money is not a problem. Jian Shen spoke without a question. All right, honored customer, please wait 1 moment, I will be back with your items. With that, the shop owner walked to the back of the store to fetch the items. Patiently, Jian Shen stood at the front of the store. The tiger cub hadn't eaten for 2 days, and while Jian Shen didn't know how often the tiger cub needed to eat, it would be for the best if he had some tiger milk on hand. Soon enough, the time it took to burn a candlewick had gone by without the shop owner reappearing or any sound coming from the back at all. By now, even Jian Shen had an impatient look on his face. But for the sake of the tiger cub's meal, he could only continue to wait. Afterward, another brief moment had gone by without the shop owner ever returning. A sense of paranoia struck Jian Shen as he decided that staying here any longer would be unwise and turned to walk out. Just at that moment, a squad of armored guards suddenly walked through the doors toward Jian Shen. Crap! Jian Shen thought, knowing what this matter was coming to. Then, the commander of the squadron walked up to Jian Shen with a cold glare. Who are you? Speak your name. Without hesitation, Jian Shen responded, I am Chen Yi, what might the militia want with me? The commander of the soldiers looked at the bulge on Jian Shen's stomach for a moment before speaking. What are you hiding in there? Show it to us. Jian Shen's face grew dark. The items in my possession have nothing to do with you. There has been a spike in criminal acts in the city recently. You must be hiding stolen goods. The commander spat out the words as if he thought Jian Shen was a fiend. Hearing that, Jian Shen gently lifted away the robes to reveal the head of the tiger cub who was still sleeping soundly. Is this an item that appeared to be stolen? The soldier's eyes immediately shined as he spotted the tiger cub. Quick, capture the cub and report it to the city lord straight away. The surrounding soldiers charged at Jian Shen with their saint weapons ready to strike. Snorting, Jian Shen's hand flashed through the air and shot a strong gust of wind that pierced into their chests before sweeping his other hand across the counter. In a single movement, he had already collected all of the nearby milk bottles into his space ring before leaving the shop. Most of the soldiers were great saints while the commander himself was only a saint master. Just how could they stop him? Bursting out of the store, Jian Shen immediately held tight to the tiger cub as he ran for the city gates. Leaping across from roof to roof with an impeccable speed, everyone on the ground could only look at him in shock as they talked to each other. Quick, send a report to the city lord's mansion, we've found the target. The commander, who had his chest pierced by the gust of wind, cried out loud as he clutched at the part of the chest. In a flash, an ear-splitting sound could be heard as a ball of fireworks flew off into the air before exploding loudly. Not too long after, a figure could be seen flying through the air in the direction of where the firework had exploded. Look, that person's flying, heavens, who would have known there would be a Heaven Saint Master within our Lanfeng city? At the front of the city, a soldier guard cried out in a large voice, hurry up and close the gates. Everyone forward. Anyone that disobeys will be killed without mercy. Archers, prepare your arrows and await the signal. Hurry up and get ready. Immediately, the soldiers all began to busy themselves with their own respective tasks as the gate began to close. At the same time, each person was shouting out commands to each other. Continuing to fly along the road, he quickly came to the city gates, which were already closed and had blocked many people from entering or leaving. With a single leap, Jian Shen had already began to scale the wall in an attempt to cross it. Fire! The soldier commander had barked out. Suddenly, the already notched bows of the archers were released, causing a myriad of arrows to fly at Jian Shen, while the crossbow wielders launched the heavy bolts at him as well. With a sneer, Jian Shen let a bubble of Saint Force out from his entire body before spreading out 20 meters away from him with a thickness of 2 inches so the arrows wouldn't pierce it. Fire, fire, fire. Don't let him get away. The commander cried out. The soldiers continued to hustle around as they resupplied for the second barrage. Jian Shen's speed was far beyond what they had anticipated, and so by the time the archers had notched their arrows again, Jian Shen had already started to run further up the city walls. With each step he made, he accelerated in speed before he finally cleared the wall and escaped the city. Commander, he escaped. What should we do now? Give chase? Commander, should we bring people to chase after him? The other soldiers could only cry out for the commander and wait for a response, but no response came. Commander, what should we do? A captain had asked once more. Suddenly, a line of blood could be seen on the commander's neck. Then, right in the middle of everyone, the head of their commander fell to the ground. Chapter 364, Inescapable Net, 2. Outside the city walls was a flat prairie land that Jian Shen continued to fly across at a breakneck speed. With each step, he traversed at least 20 meters. Even though he was not using the illusionary flash, he was still traveling quite fast. Now that this situation had occurred, Jian Shen knew that every single surrounding city was no longer safe. Every single power had already put out an order for him to be arrested in the case they discovered Jian Shen. Because the tiger was far too conspicuous and because Jian Shen had promised Rum Guinness that he would take care of the cub would have to stay with him. Right now, the tiger cub was far too weak to protect itself. If it were to try and live by itself, then there was a good chance a mercenary group or another magical beast would get to it. While Jian Shen was running, he suddenly felt something coming from behind. Turning his head behind, an unsightly look graced his face as he saw a figure flying through the air a few hundred meters behind. Jian Shen's heart grew a little heavy at this sight. After fighting the ancestor of the Moyan clan in the valley, he knew just how strong a Heaven Saint Master was. Even if he gave it his all, the two sides would end up being heavily injured. There was just too much of a difference between an Earth Saint Master and a Heaven Saint Master. Even after using the Heaven's stolen fortune to multiply his strength threefold, he was only barely able to fight a Heaven Saint Master. Jian Shen wouldn't be able to do anything either if the Heaven Saint Master fled, since they could fly through the air while Jian Shen could not. Looking at the flying Heaven Saint Master darkly, Jian Shen immediately used the illusionary flash in order to explode across the plains and travel 10 times faster than before. Jian Shen's sudden burst of speed caused the distance between him and the Heaven Saint Master to increase by a large amount. However, the Heaven Saint Master began to increase his speed as well, following close behind Jian Shen and trying to close the distance. The illusionary flash was a heaven-tier battle skill that Jianchen had only a small grasp of. Despite it increasing his speed many times over, it would not be enough to outrace the Heaven Saint Master. After all, Jianchen was running on the ground, but the other was flying through the air. Jianchen, you cannot escape. Why not hand over the seal of Treasure Mountain back to the Shi family and save your energy? At this moment, the voice of the Heaven Saint Master could be heard like a sound of thunder that rang through the world. Hearing this familiar sound, Jianchen turned back once more only to discover that the Heaven Saint Master flying through the air was the person he had talked to back in Mercenary City. It was one of the 4 Kai brothers. Jianchen continued to silently try and run away. While he had the strength to fight against a Heaven Saint Master, he did not wish to fight just yet. Even if he were to beat back the Heaven Saint Master, he would have to pay a heavy price for it. With this heavy price, then if any reinforcements came, there would be no strength left in Jianchen to fight back. Jianchen, just return the seal of Treasure Mountain, you cannot escape. You most likely don't know this, but the Shi family and Jetta clan have joined forces. Aside from us 4 Kai brothers, there are another 4 other Heaven Saint Masters watching out for you at the same time. Knowing that you came out of the Thousand Poison Valley, us 8 men were able to go to the surrounding cities nearby and wait for you. I've already notified the other 7 of our location, you cannot escape. The Heaven Saint Master spoke. Hearing this, Jianchen's face grew extremely dark. He hadn't thought that 8 Heaven Saint Masters would be chasing him. Facing against just one of them was hard enough, let alone 8. With 8, there would be no chance for him to fight back at all. Jianchen's speed continued to increase as he took out a map. The surrounding area was quickly memorized by Jianchen before he flew off into a random direction without hesitation. Utilizing the Heaven's stolen fortune to increase his speed by triple the amount, he tried to outrace the Heaven Saint Master once more using the illusionary flash. All that was left in Jianchen's original spot was a tremendous dust storm. The sudden burst in speed from Jianchen had caused the elder from the 4 Kai brothers to be stunned. Looking at the now gone figure of Jianchen, he could only stutter out a phrase in amazement, impossible. Just how could he travel so fast? In the next moment, the elder had no other choice but to chase after Jianchen while trying to ensure that Jianchen did not get too far away. With a newfound determination, the elder suddenly flew higher up into the air and began to follow the trail of dust left behind Jianchen's extreme speed. Jianchen had never traveled at such a speed before. Right now, even the scenery was completely indistinguishable to him since it was going past him at such a blur. The illusionary flash and Heaven's stolen fortune combined had allowed Jianchen to exceed what a Heaven Saint Master could do. However, this would result in an extreme amount of Saint Force being consumed. Being a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master, he would only be able to keep this up for 2 hours. After that, he would be completely out of Saint Force. Already feeling his Saint Force reserves depleting, Jianchen quickly took out a Class 5 Monster Core from his space ring and began to recover some of the Saint Force while he ran. 2 hours later, Jianchen had already traveled for well over 2,000 kilometers. On the road, he had gone by many cities, but Jianchen hadn't dared enter any single one of them. Now that his Saint Force reserves were empty, Jianchen took the tiger cub to a giant mountain. The mountain was rather barren, but the peak couldn't be seen thanks to the clouds. Carrying the tiger cub, Jianchen arrived at a stone forest where Jianchen immediately set about carving a hole in the limestone for him to hide in for now. Aside from the outside markings, there was another giant stone that blocked the entrance so that the cave inside would be hidden. After all of the preparations were made, Jianchen stumbled into the cave weakly. Taking out a night pearl to illuminate the cave, he looked around the newly constructed cave. Woo, woo. At this moment, the tiger cub began to wail as it started to gnaw on Jianchen's arm while pressing its paws against his chest. Occasionally, sounds could be heard coming from its stomach, symbolizing that it was hungry. By now, even Jianchen knew that the tiger cub was hungry. Hurriedly taking out a milk bottle to feed the cub. He knew that it had been at least 2 days since the cub had eaten. If it had been a human infant, it would have long since cried out in hunger. It was only after it had finished off 10 kilograms of milk bottles that the cub had been satisfied. The watching Jian-Chen had been astonished. The tiger cub was only so big, but it had managed to drink a surprising amount of magical beast milk. Jian-Chen had a total of 50 kilograms worth of milk, but the tiger had already consumed nearly a fifth of it. If the cub's appetite continued on like this, then he would only be able to feed the cub like this another 4 times. It seems that I need to collect even more magical beast milk. But I don't even know where and what other resources to gather so that the tiger cub will grow. Just what is this resource that is needed anyways? Jian-Chen threw the empty bottles with a reflective pondering. The tiger cub lay on the ground with its eyes closed in satisfaction. Curling up in a cute manner, the tiger cub's wings were still furrowed close to its body in a way that made them hard to see. Afterward, Jian-Chen took out another monster core to heal his Saint Force. Using both the illusionary flash and the heaven's stolen fortune for such an extended period of time had left Jian-Chen empty. 10 hours later, Jian-Chen finally stood back up. With the power of the azure and violet sword spirits, his absorption rate was far faster than before. In a short 10 hours, his Saint Force had already came back to the maximum amount. Walking to the side of the cave, Jian-Chen peeked out from a small crack of the entrance. It was still early with the sun already starting to rise from the west. Jian-Chen didn't leave just yet, however. Vanishing his presence, he slowly moved the stone to enlarge the hole to see what was happening outside. An hour later, a single person flew past Jian-Chen's line of sight before quickly disappearing as fast as it had appeared. In another moment, a fire-red-colored figure blew past Jian-Chen's line of sight as well. Jian-Chen waited for another 4 hours before seeing a total of 5 men fly through the sky. Not too long after, they all disappeared as well. The sky outside slowly turned to night as the sun began to set. Once more, Jian-Chen returned to the inner depths of the cave and began to ponder his next step. Based off what he had seen earlier, he had known that the 2 Jita clan and Shi family were already watching the entire area. Although they hadn't found his hiding spot thanks to the hidden, well-concealed entrance, it was only a matter of time before this secret area would be discovered. So this meant he couldn't stay here for long. Furthermore, Jian-Chen was worried that the Jita clan and the Shi family would hire even more Heaven Saint Masters. After all, they wanted the ruler armament in his possession. It would make sense if even their ancestors were to come by themselves personally for the sake of retrieving it. Chapter 365, Inescapable Net, 3, Jian-Chen sat on the cavern ground with a calm posture. Although it wasn't suitable to stay here for long, it wasn't time to leave just yet. He would have to wait until nightfall before he could leave so that the chance of being detected would be extremely low. Nightfall was already fast approaching on the outside and cast a dark light over the grounds. On the highest peak of the mountain, 8 elders stood in a circle as the violent wind blew their hair into a messy state and forced their clothes to look as if they were ready to tear apart. Third Elder Kai, do you really think Jian-Chen is hiding within this mountain range? A red-robed elder looked at one of the 4 brothers and asked. The man nodded his head. Although he is fast enough to leave me behind, I was able to see that he left no marks traveling away from this mountain range. Then would you be able to ascertain his position within this mountain range? Another person besides the 3rd brother asked. It was the 3rd elder of the Jita clan. The 3rd brother shook his head. I couldn't. The area here is too complex and is also made of pure rock. Even if he were to leave a trace here, it would be hard to find. The other elders went quiet as they all thought about the 3rd brother's words. They had already searched the entire mountain range for half the day, but there had been no traces at all. At that moment, the eldest brother of the Kai family spoke. 3rd brother, I've heard that Jian-Chen's speed was far faster than yours was when you flew through the air. Is that true? When the 3rd brother thought back to when he was chasing Jian-Chen, he couldn't help but let out a sigh as he spoke. Correct. Jian-Chen's speed later on was extremely fast. He was somehow able to outpace me. With that speed, would say even the 3rd elder wouldn't be able to catch up. The 3rd brother spoke. You speak words of crap. the third elder is a wind-attributed fourth cycle Heaven Saint Master. Aside from another wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master, there is no one alive that could outrace the third elder in speed. The fourth elder exploded with rage. The words that the third brother had said infuriated him. Fourth elder. The third elder waved his hand as if to abate the fourth elder's anger. The four Kai brothers and the Shi family were on special relationships with each other. All four of them were Heaven Saint Masters with high rankings. If the fourth elder were to give them no face by swearing, then a potential problem may occur. Hearing this insult from the fourth elder, the other three brothers grew dark in the face. The four brothers were friends against the same enemy, so when the fourth elder insulted one of them, he had insulted all four of them. Fellow brothers, fourth elder has always had a nasty temper, please forgive us for that. Please put the blame on me instead. I hope that fellow brothers will not hold this against us. The third elder spoke with a kind expression on his face as he cupped his hands together in a sign of apology. The four brothers' faces improved a little after this. They weren't aware of the explosive temper of the fourth elder, and so they didn't care for it. With this apology from the third elder, they all immediately gave the matter no more attention. Let us discuss our next plan then to find Jian Chen within the shortest amount of time possible. He has the family heirlooms of our two families, we cannot afford to lose them. The elder of the Jeda clan spoke. But the area around this place is vast. Jian Chen could be anywhere within this mountain range. With just us looking for him, I feel that we should ask for more help. Let us hire some people to help us and have some other mercenary groups join in as well. The fourth brother spoke with a vexed face. The time they had spent chasing Jian Chen had been unbearable. This plan has merit to me. The other Jeda clan elder spoke in agreement. The third brother of the Shi family spoke. Jian Chen is an extremely smart person. Whatever we can think of, he will be able to as well. Furthermore, we've already administered such a method once in the Thousand Poison Valley, so he will definitely be prepared for such an event. I say that he will try to take advantage of the night tonight to escape. Thus, this night is the most important night. We should split into 8 directions and watch over the area so that he won't be able to escape. After the next morning, we should send one person to go hire several mercenaries to comb the mountains and search for him. This method is decent, let's do it. With the proposal planned by the third brother, the rest of the 8 made preparations on which area to guard before splitting up. Within the dark cave, Jian Chen continued to sit with a calm expression. Although it was extremely early in the morning, he still made no move to leave the cave. 2 hours quickly went by, making it almost 4 in the morning. By this time, the tiger cub had already woken up and was crawling around the dark cave while mewling with a joyful expression. Slowly opening his eyes, Jian Chen stood up and listened for movements around the cave. Then, returning the night pearl, he scooped up the playful tiger and headed out of the cave. Walking to the cave, Jian Chen slowly moved away the stone covering the cave, afraid that he would make a loud sound and alert any of the hidden Heaven Saint Masters. It seemed as if even the white tiger had sensed that there were dangers hidden in the night and remained quiet. Poking its head out of Jian Chen's clothes, the tiger cub stared all around the area with its bright and curious eyes. Stealthily walking away from the cave without a sound, Jian Chen began to travel as if he was a specter in the night. With his presence concealed as he crossed the mountain range, not a single sound could be heard. At the same time 10 kilometers away from Jian Chen, an elderly man was sitting on top of a mountain peak as if harmonizing with the world itself. After cultivating so hard and becoming a Heaven Saint Master, not only was he able to control the world energy to fly, he could also detect any changes that happened within it. At this moment, the sitting elder immediately opened his eyes as 2 mysterious glows began to shine within them. There's a disturbance in the energy, something's making a move. The elder's eyes grew fierce as he instantly flew into the sky like a specter in the night. Within a few breaths, the elder had landed upon another mountain range where the night had completely overtaken it. Even without much visibility, the elder's eyes could still stare down and see something of interest to him. I've finally found you. The elder let out a smile in surprise. Then, without hesitation, he flew toward the dark figure. At the same time, the dark figure that the elder saw seemed to have spotted the elder and immediately sped up in speed. "Jian-Chen, where do you think you're going?" The flying elder roared before increasing his own speed to try and overtake the escaping figure. Within the peaceful night, the elder's explosive words had rang throughout the area so that the other 7 Heaven Saint Masters would be able to hear him loud and clear. Immediately, several sharp sounds could be heard as the other 7 Heaven Saint Masters came flying into the area. Like a pigeon startled by the twang of a bow, Jian-Chen immediately gave up all pretense of stealth and flew faster toward the mountain exit. The darkness of the night was nothing too major for any of the Heaven Saint Masters to be affected by, so all of the elders increased their speeds once more. In this chase, Jian-Chen was able to escape the area quickly. With the usage of the illusionary flash and the Heaven's stolen fortune to increase his speed, he was like an arrow in the night. In an instant, he had been able to traverse a long area of ground with a large dust cloud trailing behind. With the combined usage of both the illusionary flash and the Heaven's stolen fortune, the flying Heaven Saint Master that were chasing after him quickly disappeared in his wake. Afterward, Jian-Chen began to slow down a bit and stop the Heaven's stolen fortune. He knew that if he were to go too quickly, then the dust trail would give his position away and allow for the group of Heaven Saint Masters to quickly discover where he was. But not too long after Jian-Chen had let up his speed, a dazzling cyan light could be seen flying through the dark night with a terrifying amount of speed. "Blast it all, it's a wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master." Jian-Chen cursed before reactivating the Heaven's stolen fortune. His speed instantly skyrocketed so as to escape the Heaven Saint Master behind him. The wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master chasing behind him was the 3rd elder of the Shi family and was also the very same person who had initially used the poison to threaten Jian-Chen. Seeing Jian-Chen's figure grow farther and farther away, the 3rd elder gasped in shock. It seems the 3rd brother's words were not false. This Jian-Chen's speed exceeds the realm of possibility if it is able to beat mine. This is truly hard to believe that an Earth Saint Master could achieve such a speed. Jian-Chen's new speed would only be enough for him to travel for 2 hours. After those 2 hours, he would be utterly exhausted. He wouldn't even have enough strength to fight, let alone escape. Chapter 366, Inescapable Net, 4. As he ran, Jian-Chen continued to think about his options. Changing directions every so often, he made a dash for the nearest city. Jian-Chen had already memorized the surrounding environment, so he knew that 1,000 kilometers away was a single first-class city. With a wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master chasing after him, he would only be able to throw him off temporarily. If he were to stop, then the Heaven Saint Master would quickly catch up. So running without a purpose or direction was out of the question. Once his saint force were to become empty, then he would be at a point of no return. He had to enter a city. With many different types of people around, he could hide himself without being caught. Quickly, Jian-Chen made the journey to the first-class city, and when he arrived he leaped over the wall to hide among the buildings sheltered behind it. Not too long after Jian-Chen's disappearance, an azure streak of light could be seen as the 3rd elder flew through the air. Floating in the air during the middle of the night, he stared down toward the city. What a crafty youngster. Seeing how you stopped within a city, that means you cannot keep that speed up for an extended period of time. Afterward, the elder remained motionless as he studied the city with his eyes, as if trying to find a trace of Jian-Chen that could be followed. Some time later, the sounds of 7 Heaven Saint Masters flying through the air could be heard before finally stopping right next to the 3rd elder of the Shi family. 3rd elder, could Jian-Chen have hidden himself within the city? The 4th elder asked. The 3rd elder let out a sigh. This Jian-Chen's speed is truly too fast. Even with my entire strength, I was unable to keep up with him. He managed to disappear in the city, and I've yet to figure out where he is located. How is that possible? 3rd elder, is Jian-Chen's speed so truly fast that even you cannot keep up? The 4th elder's eyes grew extremely wide in disbelief at the words coming out from the 3rd elder's mouth. But he wasn't the only one. The two brothers from the Jita clan could only stare in disbelief as well. An Earth Saint Master being able to outpace a wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master was an impossible feat until now. Hearing this, the third brother of the Kai family hid a small smile. If even a wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master wasn't able to catch Jian Shen, then Jian Shen escaping from his hands was not too much of an embarrassing thing. This Jian Shen is far too crafty. To hide in a city where there are thousands of people and buildings, finding him will become an extremely arduous task. If we are not careful, he'll take advantage of our carelessness and slip out among the others. One of the elders from the Jita clan spoke. Fellow comrades, it's already dawn, we should hurry up and assign ourselves to a specific area to ensure he does not escape our grasp once more. The third brother spoke. The way I see things is that the 8 of us should go to the city lord and have him garrison some soldiers to help us. The rest of us will then guard the cardinal gates as well as the other isolated areas of the city. This way, Jian Shen cannot escape from us. Another elder spoke from the Jita clan. The third brother nodded his head lightly. This is the only option left. I will go inform the city lord. The 7 of you should go spread out and guard your areas. We must maintain a strict guard. No matter who tries to leave, they must use clear water to wash their faces. This is to prevent Jian Shen from changing his face. If anyone doesn't comply, be merciless. With the plan in place, everyone set out to accomplish their side of things. Within a large garden, a group of soldiers with torches held high could be seen patrolling the area. Just from their appearances, anyone could tell that this area did not belong to a regular person. Not too long after the guards had patrolled the area, a dark shadow suddenly appeared from the side. Within the guise of night, he entered without a sound into one of the empty rooms. This figure was Jian Shen. After selecting an empty house to reside in, Jian Shen strained his ears for any outside noises before settling down with the white tiger by his side. Taking out another Class 5 monster core, he began to recover his lost saint force. The white tiger seemed as if it had sensed the danger Jian Shen was in, so on the way, the tiger cub had been very quiet as it remained around Jian Shen's chest. Its eyes looked about the area in curiosity, and when they got to the empty house, it sat by Jian Shen's side. Straining its ears as well, the cub didn't make another move. Time went by as the sun quickly hung high into the sky. By this point, Jian Shen had fully recovered his strength and stood up to survey the area. This room hadn't been inhabited by a person for a very long time, so there was a layer of dust on the ground. Furthermore, the arrangements of the furniture were rather basic, as if meant for the next resident to do the arrangements when they moved in. After sitting in the room for several moments, Jian Shen's eyes fell upon his space ring. With some hesitation, he grabbed another space ring and began to divide up his things. The ruler armaments, heaven tier battle skill and several other precious objects went into one space ring, while the other space ring contained several sets of clothes, some monster cores, and money. Then, Jian Shen swapped out his space ring for the other one. The space ring with his more precious items went into a small box which he began to find a hiding place for it. Since there were 8 Heaven Saint Masters surrounding the city, it was difficult to predict if he would survive or not, so he needed to prepare himself. One plan was to hide the more precious items in a space ring and place it in a concealed area. Even if he were to die, Jian Shen had no desire to see the items be recovered by either the Jita clan or Shi family. If he were to escape from this calamity, after everything had blown over, he could come back and retrieve the items. After locking the items within the box, Jian Shen thought for a moment before hurriedly opening the box up once more. Taking the Duanyan sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain out, he placed them in a third space ring. He knew that the third brother of the Shi family had a method to find the ruler armaments, so he needed to separate them from the other precious items. Nightfall came by quickly, leaving the garden empty. Jian Shen lightly opened the doors and escaped outside with the white tiger. In a moment, he came across the well used by the inhabitants of the building. Taking the space ring with the box in it, he tossed it into the well and headed back toward the room he was staying in. Leaping onto the beams of the building, Jian released a sharp amount of sword chi from his fingertips and dug a small finger-sized hole for the other space ring to be placed. Placing the space ring with the ruler armaments into this hole, Jian filled the hole back up, making it extremely hard to notice and utterly impossible for even the gods to know. After all of this was done, Jian let out a sigh in relief. Even if he were to be discovered, it would still not be easy for either of the two families. At daybreak, Jian changed his face again. He then hugged the obedient, little white tiger against his chest and lightly rubbed its head as he said in a low voice, "Little tiger, I need to go scout around to figure out the situation and can't bring you with me. You have to listen well and obediently stay here. Don't go running around, alright?" The tiger cub's bright eyes stared up at Jian, leaving him unsure of whether or not his words were understood. Ignoring the issue, Jian took out several milk bottles and left the tiger cub on the bed before leaving the room. Jian discreetly made his way onto the streets from the manor. By walking from the alleyway onto the main street, he made it seem like he was just another passerby. He then began to inspect the houses to see what type of area he was in. On the gates to the villa, a large board could be seen hanging overhead with the words, Huangpu Trading. Evidently, this area was heavily reliant on trading. Remembering the name of the villa, Jian left the area and began to wander around the city. A first-class city was far bigger and more luxurious than a second-class city. When one entered a first-class city, one would be able to see several rich and strong-looking mercenaries that were clearly not seen in such concentrated amounts anywhere else. Suddenly, a loud noise could be heard as a squadron of armored soldiers visited store after store as if searching for something. On the road, they continued to question everyone in such a manner that caused everyone to grumble in annoyance and confusion. Just then, a soldier blocked Jian path. "Have you seen a person carrying a pure white magical beast anywhere?" "I have not." Jian face didn't betray any emotions as he replied. "You may go. Remember, if you are to see either a snowy white magical beast or a man with perhaps an unnatural bulge, you are to immediately report this to the city lord." The soldier's face carried a serious look as he stared at Jian. "Yes, understood. If I see such a thing, I will make sure to notify the city lord straight away," Jian replied. After that, the soldier didn't pay any more attention to Jian and left him to interrogate someone else. After walking down 3 streets, Jian could see the same soldiers visit every single store or home and block off people to interrogate them. Carelessly, Jian wandered the streets before finally coming across the city gates. Instead of a steady stream of people walking in or out, there was a large congestion of merchants and travelers. Walking to the higher levels of one of the nearby restaurants, Jian could only see a large amount of soldiers guarding the city gates with several large vats of water. With each person that tried to enter or leave, the soldiers would use a wet rag to scrub at their faces. Even the rich and powerful were not exempt from this treatment, much to their anger. Seeing this, Jian couldn't help but smile bitterly. Right now this city was under the complete control of the Jetta clan and the Shi family. With this, they had set out an inescapable net all over the city. Chapter 367, Whereabouts revealed. In order to not rouse any suspicion, Jian left the restaurant after some time and immediately went to go buy a Class 2 magical beast mount. After disguising himself as a mercenary, he set out for the other 3 gates to see if they were undergoing a similar situation. On the way, Jian had been stopped several times over by soldiers. Leisurely answering the questions, Jian could only secretly rejoice to himself about the fact that the soldiers did not require everyone within the city to wash their faces as well. Although his disguise was flawless almost to the point of perfection, it would not hold against water. If he were to be asked to wash his face, his disguise would wash away quickly. This entire day, Jian could only wander around the city in an attempt to figure out where the eyes and ears of the Jetta clan and the Shi family did not extend to. Although he could see many good places to hide within the city, none were long-term hiding spots. Within the official halls of Huangpu Trading, an elder around the age of 70 could be seen seated at the first spot. On both sides of him, around 20 younger men could be seen with strange glints in their eyes. The elder sitting at the first spot was the current patriarch of the Huangpu clan. With a bright glow in his eyes, he slowly spoke, "The city is in a strange commotion today. All of the soldiers have been ordered and dispatched to search for a person with an unknown appearance within the city. I was just notified by the city lord that all of the clans within Moonlight City must comply with the city's operation. In the case that we find a person with a snowy white magical beast or someone with an unnatural bulge, we are to report to the lord immediately." With that, the elder stopped speaking for a moment to look at a middle-aged man near him. "Linda, you are the one in charge of our guards. In a moment go and take half our men to search the area under our control. Then take the other half to comb through our entire compound. In the case that he is spotted, do not let him escape, understood?" "Yes, Patriarch." The Huangpu clansman Linda replied before hesitating for a moment. "Patriarch, this is only just a single person. Is it necessary to use so much of our resources to find him?" "That's right, Patriarch, I think this is strange as well. Just how could the city lord decree such an order like this? Using the entire garrison to search for a single person within the city, isn't this making a mountain out of a molehill?" Straight away all of the men sitting down at the table burst into their own misgivings. The patriarch could only sigh. "This was a sudden development for me as well, but the situation is far more dire than you all believe. If the city lord finds that the person they are looking for was spotted in our territory or decides that we were hiding him on purpose, then the consequences will be severe and our clan may disappear." Upon hearing this, the group of men sitting down instantly turned pale as they all grew frightened at the consequences. "Good, this meeting is settled then. Linda, go and lead the search yourself. Do not allow any accidents to happen or any stone left untouched. Otherwise, the damage to our Huangpu clan will be far too severe for us to handle." The patriarch spoke with a serious look. "Patriarch, you needn't worry, I, Linda, will take charge of this matter personally." As the Huangpu clan prepared to search for the person, every other minor or major clan in Mingyang City were doing the same thing. The entire atmosphere within the city had grown to a frantic height. Within the Huangpu clan, a squadron of guards came to the villa to search the place. Whether it was the garden or log house, they did not spare a single room from being searched. Without overlooking anything, they had even searched all of the high-ranking member rooms without exception. At this moment, one of the guards arrived at one of the abandoned rooms and began to search inside. "Everyone be careful, do not allow even the cupboards to be untouched. Do not let a single detail escape from your eyes." One of the guards spoke out in warning. Suddenly, the room that Jian Chen had hidden in was opened with several guards walking in to start rifling around the place. Sensing the nearby danger, the white tiger cub silently curled up within the corner of the room as both of its bright eyes stared out along with its ears straining to listen for any sound. At this time, the bed sheets that had fallen to the ground and covered the cub were ripped apart, revealing the face of one of the guards as he looked underneath the bed. It was very spacious below the bed, and despite the tiger cub's attempt to hide, its snowy white fur was far too eye-catching to escape detection. "Captain, I've found something." The guard cried out instantly. Straight away, the captain came into the room with a grace face. "What is it?" "Captain, take a look under the bed." The guard crawled down and pointed. Crawling onto the ground to take a look, the captain soon discovered the white tiger cub that was desperately trying to hide. "Quickly, notify Overseer Linda." The captain's face grew shocked as he ordered the soldier next to him. In a flash, the Overseer Linda was notified, and the moment he saw the white tiger cub, his face grew unnaturally grim as he barked, "Take positions, search the perimeter. In the case you find someone suspicious, apprehend him immediately." "Yes." The guards all replied with equally serious expressions. Soon after, the white tiger cub had been brought to Linda, who then rushed it toward the patriarch's room. On the way, the white tiger cub had clearly shown its disapproval of Linda by biting and scratching at his arms and chest with a growling sound. Although the white tiger cub was not an ordinary beast and belonged to the ancient race of the winged tiger god, it had only just been born. Right now it was as frail as a newborn infant. Walking was already a hard task, and it did not have enough strength to protect itself. Within the main halls, the entirety of the upper-ranking members of the Huangpu clan had already gathered. Each one with them had a serious expression as they turned to look at the growling white tiger cub in the patriarch's hands. Have you made your investigations? Who raised this tiger cub? The Huangpu patriarch asked the entire group of people in front of him. The 20 men in front of him shook their heads slowly before Linda spoke. Patriarch, I've already made inquiries. Within our Huangpu clan, not a single member has raised this beast. All of them haven't even heard of such a magical beast before. Since it's like that, then this magical beast must be the one the city lord is looking for. Linda, go and report this matter to the city lord's mansion straight away. The patriarch spoke gravely. Even after the city lord had heard the information, the entire city dared not rest. An elder was immediately dispatched to the Huangpu clan, and even the patriarch dared not to say anything out of line to him. This elder was the third brother of the Shi family who had been waiting in the city lord's mansion for any information. Upon hearing that the cub had been found, the third brother had a small smile on his face, an entire body of snowy white fur, less than a meter tall and has wings. It appears that this is the tiger that Jian Shen left behind. Haha, Jian Shen, you should know by now. I've already cast an inescapable net across the entire Moonlight City, you cannot escape. After an entire day, Jian Shen had already traversed the entire Moonlight City on the magical beast mount. The situation had been as he expected, all 4 gates were being tightly watched and even the inhabitants were being interrogated. Everyone had been forced to wash their faces in order to leave the city, thus removing any idea Jian Shen had to escape the city with a disguise. His regular appearance had already been drawn and distributed throughout the city, so even if Jian Shen were to use his regular face, he would be spotted instantly. Jian Shen had rented a room within an inn and had given the Class 2 magical beast mount to a waiter to look after. After waiting for nightfall, he slipped out of the inn without a word and leaped back toward the Huangpu compound without being detected. Like a silent shadow jumping over the wall, he carefully ran toward the room where he had hidden the tiger cub. Creeping into the room, Jian Shen knelt down beside the floor and took out a night pearl from his space belt to light up the room. But the moment he looked underneath the bed, it was empty. The white tiger cub was nowhere to be seen. Jian Shen's face blanched as he immediately looked around the room with the night pearl giving him light. As he looked, he could see a series of footsteps on the dusty ground. Jian Shen's heart began to beat wildly as his mind came to a single conclusion: the white tiger cub had been captured. Within the semi-illuminated room, Jian Shen clenched his fists tightly as his eyebrows furrowed together. Leaving the room, he immediately raced for the center hall of the compound. Chapter 368, No Way Out. Carefully advancing toward the center hall, Jian Shen began to look around. Jian Shen knew that his identity could be revealed at any moment, but he had to take back the tiger cub at any cost. He had promised Rum Guinness to look after her cub, so he could not allow anything to happen to the cub. Tonight had been especially quiet in the garden. With it also being very dark and not that many patrolmen, Jian Shen had been able to sneak around to the center hall like a ghost in his pure black clothing. There was an utmost need for stealth if he wanted to take back the tiger. Just as Jian Shen drew close to the loft in the hall, a familiar sound could be heard in Jian Shen's ears. It was the growling sound of the tiger cub. Hearing the cries of the tiger cub, Jian Shen had a slight smile on his face as he immediately began to search for where the sound was coming from. He didn't think that it would be that easy to find the cub. Suddenly, the entire area became brightly lit as torches appeared everywhere around Jian Shen and dyed the place a bright red. Jian Shen, you really did return. I was thinking you were going to try and escape this time. An elderly voice could be heard all of a sudden before a person walked out among the crowd. The person who had spoke wore a white robe and had a benevolent smile to his face. It was the third brother of the Shi family, and right behind him were the high-ranking members of the Huangpu clan. In the hands of the patriarch was the tiger cub. Woo, woo, upon seeing Jian Shen, the tiger cub in the patriarch's hands grew excited and began to flail its paws in an attempt to get to him. With a small but urgent growl, the four paws began to stamp onto the patriarch's chest, as if unwilling to be hugged by the patriarch any longer. Seeing that he had been discovered, Jianchen leaped out from the shadows after realizing they were useless. The patriarch of the Huangpu clan began to measure up Jianchen. From what he could see, this Jianchen was well under the age of 30, a youth in every sense of the word. Is this really the person the city lord and these respected men are after? The Huangpu patriarch thought. Jianchen gave a leveled glare at the Huangpu patriarch. Return the tiger cub to me. Ignoring Jianchen's request, the patriarch turned to the third brother of the Shi family. Although he was the patriarch of a clan, he knew that it was utterly compulsory that he listen to this elder in front of him. The third brother stared back at Jianchen evenly. Jianchen, I have put up with you long enough. Return the ruler armaments back to us immediately, or else do not blame us for our actions. Although you are extremely fast, we know you cannot keep it up for long. You cannot escape from us. Jianchen turned to the third brother with a laughing smile. I'm afraid that even after I return the ruler armaments to you, you will use them in return against me. I am no idiot. If you wish to take back the ruler armaments, you will have to come and get them. Go die then. The third brother's face grew exceedingly dark as he lost the kindly expression on his face. With a frightening glint, he flew toward Jianchen with his saint weapon ready to pierce Jianchen's chest. Although Jianchen was extremely fast, he was still an Earth Saint Master in the end. Someone on that caliber of strength was no match for a Heaven Saint Master like the third brother. But when the third brother had taken action, so did Jianchen. Initializing both the illusionary flash and the Heaven's stolen fortune, his entire figure flickered away from existence before reappearing behind the patriarch. Taking back the cub, his feet smashed against the ground and disappeared from the area once again. A ripple of energy appeared behind Jianchen's back as he retreated. In that instant, the third brother had slammed against Jianchen's back with extreme force. PCH. Jianchen spat out a mouthful of blood before disappearing into the night. The third brother looked up to the sky before letting out a whistle that sounded almost like a clap of thunder within the dark sky. Then, he flew into the sky and chased after Jianchen like a speeding arrow. The moment the other Heaven Saint Masters heard the whistle from their positions, they grew startled. Soaring into the sky, they began to look down as if preparing to ambush Jianchen at any given moment. With a plan like this, no matter where Jianchen went, he would be followed and blocked by any one of the Heaven Saint Masters. Half a moment later, the sound of the sound barrier breaking could be heard as one of the floating Kai brothers' eyes squinted. Staring with an amazing amount of focus, he could see a black figure flying at tremendous speeds toward his direction. The fourth Kai brother let out another whistle, signaling the others to begin the trap. After taking out his own saint weapon in preparations, all of the fire elements in the area around him began to gather. With a wave of his hand, a single 20-meter-long agglomeration of sword chi could be seen before it was sent flying straight for Jianchen. As he was escaping, Jianchen could suddenly felt a large concentration of sword chi being sent overhead. With a startled look, he immediately leaped from the streets onto the rooftop of a nearby building without losing a fraction of speed in his attempt to dodge. Bang! A large fire-red sword chi smashed into the ground with an explosive bang, filling the air with an intense heat that blew across the environment. All of the buildings nearby crumbled underneath its might, leveling the street. As for right where the sword chi had struck, there was a 10-meter wide, 20-meter deep crater. Jianchen's face maintained a grave expression as he looked at the crater. From this, he could tell the strength of this person was far stronger than the patriarch of the Moyan clan. The surrounding air around the Kai brother began to ripple with heat as if a meteorite was streaking through the sky before another attack of sword chi smashed into the ground where Jianchen was. Seeing that Jianchen's speed was far too much for him to keep up with, the elder quickly turned the entire place into an ocean of fire so as to ignite even the air. The heat was so intense that it could melt steel. A Heaven Saint Master was already capable of manipulating the energy of the world. The fourth brother was capable of manipulating the fire elements in the world to form a 500-meter wide and 100-meter tall ocean of fire. Jianshan growled slightly under his breath as a ripple of Saint force came out from within him to protect his entire body from the ocean of fire. At the same time, he used the illusionary flash to blow past the attack with another attempt to escape from the city. Suddenly, another 3 streaks of fire came across the sky like shooting stars with a fiery trail. Approaching quickly, the closest Heaven Saint Master had already burst outward with another attack of fire. By this point, Jianshan was already surrounded by the ocean of fire. It was 100 meters tall and covered the sky with its flame. There was nowhere in front that Jianshan could borrow for shelter, so he could only choose to continue leaping forward. The temperature within the sea of fire had been so hot that the Saint force he had around his body instantly shattered and ignited his clothes on fire. It was so hot that even his hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes were on the verge of burning up. Resisting the magma-like heat fire all around him, Jianshan continued to travel toward the exit of the sea of fire. Bang! Suddenly, a loud explosion could be heard as the sea of fire exploded. Scattering light everywhere, the darkness of the night was illuminated for a brief moment, and those who were sleeping soundly were quickly awakened. Within the sea of fire still, Jianshan had suffered a tremendous hit. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, he managed to escape the radius of fire toward the city. The elder floating in the air began to gasp for breath with a pale face as he sighed, "Even after using such an explosive wildfire and using up almost all my energy, you weren't killed. But even that, you are still heavily damaged. I doubt that even you will get far now." At this moment, the other 3 brothers appeared by his side. One of them hurriedly spoke out, "Brother, where is he?" "He escaped that way, after him, quick." The 4 brothers immediately gave chase, and not too long after, another azure glow could be seen streaking past the 4 brothers and toward the direction where Jianshan had disappeared to. With his heavy injuries, Jianshan couldn't travel along the road fast enough, but it was still at a decent pace. An hour later, Jianshan arrived at a forest. Back during the ocean of fire, Jianshan had made sure to protect the tiger cub to the best of his abilities so it had not been injured at all. With another mouthful of blood, Jianshan slowly tried to regain his breath. Right about now, he had used up 2/3 of his Saint force, making it impossible for him to escape from the Heaven Saint Masters. Suddenly, an azure glow could be seen across the sky as the wind-attributed Heaven Saint Master chased after Jianshan. Sighing to himself inwardly, Jianshan resigned himself to accepting that calamity will befall him. Petting the tiger wrapped up in his chest, Jianshan could only feel shame. He had promised Rum Guinness to take care of her child, but now that he was stuck in this situation, he had no more power to do so. Looking for a tree, Jianshan used his fists to rip apart a hole in its trunk. Carefully putting down the white tiger in it, he covered the hole back up to prevent anyone from noticing. Then, turning around, he began to leave the area. He continued to run a little farther, so that they would be far enough away from the tiger cub. Jianshan stopped to catch his breath and waited for the Heaven Saint Master to come. Right now, he had given up on running away. The Heaven Saint Master was nearly upon him. It was time for him to repay them for the damage he had taken from the sea of fire. Chapter 369, A Fusion of the Azure and Violet Sword Chi. Not too long after, an azure streak of light could be seen at the very end of the horizon. Flying toward Jianshan with a blinding speed, the Heaven Saint Master came to a stop in the air above Jianshan. Although it was dark outside, this would not impact the Heaven Saint Master at all. "Jianshan, keep on running, why did you stop?" The 3rd elder spoke with a cold sneer 50 meters in the air. He was no longer the amiable person from before. After squandering so much time to catch Jianshan, the 3rd elder had already lost his kindly temperament. Sitting down on the ground, Jianshan was currently using a Class 5 monster core to recover his strength. Even if he had decided on not running away, he did not plan on making it easy for the Heaven Saint Masters. At his death, there would be a heavy price to pay. The 3rd elder floating above Jianshan calmly without making a single move. The other members from the Jetta clan and Shi family weren't here yet, so he had no plans on making a move toward Jianchen. He had to make sure the rest of them would come first so as to save face for the other clan and disrupt the relationship they had between them. An hour later, 2 of the Heaven Saint Masters from the Jetta clan and the remaining brothers of the Kai family arrived. The 8 Heaven Saint Masters then locked Jianchen within a ring, making escape impossible for him. Jianchen, return the Duanyan sword and we will leave your body intact. The Jetta clan elder barked. Return the seal of Treasure Mountain or else we will make sure that you will beg for death. Roared another of the Kai brothers. Hearing these 2 men try to command him, Jianchen snorted as he leaped up and tossed the still undrained Class 5 monster core at the Kai brothers. If you wish for your ruler armament back, then come and take it. For such a mighty bunch of Heaven Saint Masters, you are unable to chase down a single Earth Saint Master. If it were not for my inadequate Saint force, you would have no chance of catching me. What a useless bunch. The 8 Heaven Saint Masters grew gray in the face as they heard Jianchen's words. They knew all too much already that not being able to catch a single Earth Saint Master was an undeniably shameful thing. Disgraceful child, allow me to see just what ability you have. The 4th elder barked out as he rushed toward Jianchen with his yellow giant sword billowing outward with saint force. An explosive glare could be seen in Jianchen's eyes as he brought his awareness to the highest level possible. Using the spirit sword, the light wind sword instantly became a bright silver light that shot toward the 4th elder's throat with a sonic boom-like sound. It was as if the sword had reached the speed of light. Flying through the air and leaving behind after images of itself, almost no one could see it clearly thanks to its speed and the added bonus of the night. Caught off guard, the 4th elder had his throat pierced straight through with the sword, leaving behind a large hole. Straight after the sword left from the 4th elder's throat, it flew straight toward the 3rd elder 50 meters above the ground. The 3rd elder's eye released a refined glint as a large amount of saint force flooded out from his body, protecting him completely. The moment the sword made contact, its momentum began to slow down instantaneously before stopping completely. At the same time, a single machete appeared within the 3rd elder's hand. With an explosive bang, the air around the machete began to distort from the energy being gathered within it. Then, with a grunt, the 3rd elder brought the machete smashing down upon Jianchen's light wind sword. Ding! With a crisp metallic sound, the light wind sword dropped down to the ground powerlessly. On the blade, there was a single crack. PFT. Jianchen sprayed out a mouthful of blood from the damage dealt to him. With his light wind sword connected to him and being damaged while using the spirit sword, his senses had been harmonized with the weapon itself. Not only did the 3rd elder's strike damage his saint weapon, but it had dealt a heavy blow to his spirit as well, causing a headache for Jianchen. Even after having a large hole blown through his throat, the 4th elder of the Shi family was like the ancestor of the Moyun clan and did not die. Instead, the 4th elder looked at Jianchen with a newfound fear. He had only been a few meters away from Jianchen and didn't have much time to prepare himself, but that instant had led to him being unable to defend himself against the light wind sword. If he was an Earth Saint Master, then he would have died instantly. Quick, hurry up and refine this. The 3rd elder took out a pill. Instead of placing it within his mouth for the 4th elder to chew, he tossed it into the hole left behind by Jianchen. With difficulty, Jianchen managed to recall the light wind sword back to his hand. There was some pain in his heart as he gazed at the crack in his sword. The power contained within the machete of the 3rd elder was far too much for his own sword to handle. Suddenly, a fire-red glow appeared above Jianchen's head, illuminating the area completely. Lifting his head up, Jianchen could only see the eldest Kai brother begin to manipulate the fire elements within the world before shooting it toward him. The amount of pure berserk energy swelling up from the blast scared even Jianchen. Throwing away his hesitation, Jianchen threw himself to the ground and rolled away right as the giant sword of fire slammed into the ground where Jianchen once stood. The entire ground began to shake before splitting apart to reveal a 30-meter-long fissure. Just as Jianchen stood back up, a strong gust of wind could be felt coming from behind him. One of the elders from the Jieda clan had suddenly appeared behind Jian Chen to stab him with his water-attributed saint weapon. Turning around abruptly, Jian Chen used the heaven's stolen fortune to multiply his strength 3 times over. The light wind sword in his hand began to glow with an azure and violet light as it struck against the other elder's saint weapon. Following another explosive boom, Jian Chen spat out another mouthful of blood as he was thrown back down to the ground. Each and every heaven saint master here was far stronger than the Moyan clan ancestor, and with Jian Chen's strength nearly running dry, he was in no position to take a single blow from any of them. Cough. Jian Chen continued to spit out blood as his face turned paler and paler. A large amount of blood had already escaped his body, and with so many severe blows, his fighting strength was all but gone. Brat, I'll make sure that you will beg for death. A coarse voice could be heard as the 4th elder of the Kai family coughed out the words with difficulty. Landing on the ground, he took out his saint weapon and stalked toward Jian Chen. Biting his lip, Jian Chen struggled to climb back up and clasp onto his weapon. After taking on the blow from the Jieda clan elder, several more cracks appeared on his sword. Even if I die, I won't allow you all to claim my life so easily. Despite the heavy injuries, Jian Chen still had a resolute glare in his eyes. A faint glow of azure and violet appeared on his sword once more, covering the entirety of his sword. However, this time, the 2 colors began to meld together. As the 4th elder drew close to Jian Chen, he swung the sword horizontally in an attempt to behead Jian Chen. A crazed expression overtook Jian Chen's eyes as he clutched his sword tightly. In that split moment, the combined azure and violet light began to shake for a moment before the light started to flicker and fully harmonize with each other. Just as the 2 sword chi fused with each other, an eye-piercing light shot forth from the light wind sword. No longer was the light purely azure or violet, it was now the 2 colors combined. There was azure in the violet, and violet in the azure, as if the 2 were one the entire time. Suddenly, an unbelievably strong amount of sword chi appeared and filled up the entire area. In a second, the entire world seemed as if it belonged to this realm of the sword. No matter where anyone went to, all they could feel was the overwhelming power of sword chi. This amount of sword chi was almost unbelievable to imagine. It allowed anyone to believe that it was strong enough to set the heavens aflame or even destroy the firmament of the heavens. But in the light wind sword, there was still a minute crack to be seen. This scene had caused all 8 of the Heaven Saint Masters to grow aghast at this unexpected change. Their eyes began to widen as they stared at the explosive light pouring out from the light wind sword with a mystified look. When it came to this sword chi, all they could feel was dread. Just what is this energy? The eldest Kai brother's voice began to tremble with fear. Suddenly, a gentle gust of wind blew across the 8 Heaven Saint Masters, reducing parts of their clothes to tiny fragments. Blade marks began to appear all over their bodies, and even their hair was reduced to tiny pieces as if grounded into powder. Slowly, blood began to appear from their wounds and dyed their entire body with its redness. The entire air around the area was no longer the same simple air, it was now imbued completely with sword chi. When the light wind had blown across their bodies, it was the same as being struck with countless blades of sword chi. Even if they were to breathe in a breath of air, their inner organs and viscera would be instantly cut apart by the sword chi gathered around them. With the fusion of the azure and violet sword chi, the entire area had become a realm ruled by the sword. This was a domain where only the sword chi remained supreme. Each of the 8 Heaven Saint Masters were utterly breathless. Shortly afterward, they began to release a large amount of saint force within their bodies in an attempt to protect themselves from the sword chi that was looming all around them. Quick, kill him. The 3rd elder spoke with unconcealed fear and a trembling voice. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.